Welcome to Buddhism Seeds, a place where the seeds of awakening are gently planted in every silent moment. Tonight, we'll take a gentle journey together, a return to ourselves through ancient Zen stories told in the stillness of the heart. There's nothing complicated here. You don't have to try to understand or remember. What you're about to hear are fragments of ancient wisdom preserved for over 2,000 years, like morning dewdrops, untouched and pure. And the miracle is this: no matter how turbulent the world outside may be, no matter how others behave, peace is still something you can choose from within. Just slow your breath a little. Let go of the worries of your day. There's nothing more you need to do. You only need to be here, in this moment. Close your eyes if you'd like. Let your breath flow like a small stream, and let the teachings soft as wind quietly sink into your heart. Tonight you don't need to go anywhere. You only need to return to yourself, to the stillness you've always carried inside. Long ago, in a remote mountain village where snow blanketed the bamboo groves and thatched rooftops, lived a young woman named Ayaka. She led a quiet life in a small village where cold winds blew endlessly and spring always seemed to arrive a little late. Unlike others her age, Ayaka was quiet and inwardly reflective. She did everything with great care, from folding her blanket in the early morning to picking up every fallen vegetable leaf at the evening market. She tried her best in everything, hoping deep down that someone would notice, understand, and love her. But the more she tried, the more misunderstood she felt. Some said she was distant. Some claimed she was just trying to be perfect. Gradually, Ayaka withdrew. She stopped sharing her feelings, stopped dreaming. She lived like a shadow in the long winter, present but untouched. In her small bedroom, she kept only one cherished item: an old brass mirror darkened with time, the final gift her mother left before passing away. Every morning she looked into the mirror, yet the reflection always felt unfamiliar. The face seemed more tired than she felt, the eyes heavy with doubt. The lips, though closed, looked as if they were about to cry. Who is that looking back at me, she often wondered. Still out of habit, she'd fold the mirror, place it back in the drawer, and begin the day with a forced smile. One morning, after a sleepless night filled with village gossip, Ayaka decided to climb the mountain to a small temple known for bringing peace of mind. Tucked against a mossy cliffside, it was a place villagers visited when their hearts grew too heavy. There she met Zen Master Genta, an elderly monk deeply respected in the region. He wasn't one to preach or demand chanting, but sitting near him, people often felt lighter, as if the mountain winds had carried their troubles away. When Ayaka arrived, the master was sitting on the temple porch, quietly watching pine needles fall. Seeing the burden in her eyes, he said nothing, only patted the mat beside him. "Sit here for a moment, child." She sat. They stayed silent for a long while. The wind chime gently rang in rhythm with their breath. Eventually, the master asked softly, "Do you look at yourself in the mirror every day?" Ayaka hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but the more I look, the more I see someone ugly. There's no light in my eyes. My mouth always looks like it's about to cry." The master looked into her eyes, then asked, "Is your mirror clean or covered in dust?" Ayaka froze. She had never thought about that. I don't know. It's been a long time since I cleaned it. The master smiled, his gaze warm like a candle at dusk. Then maybe it's not the mirror making you look that way, but the dust covering it. We often forget when a mirror is dirty, every reflection becomes distorted. And just like that, if we view life through a dusty mirror of self-doubt and blame, even light becomes dim. Ayaka bowed her head. No more words were spoken, but her heart had heard. That afternoon, when she returned home, she didn't change clothes or start a fire. Instead, she went straight to the drawer, took out the mirror, and quietly sat down. She picked up a soft cloth and slowly wiped away the layers of dust. Each stroke felt like releasing an old wound. She wiped and cried, not because of the mirror, but because she realized all these years she had lived inside a world reflected by her own inner doubt. She had believed she wasn't good enough. She had assumed others judged her. But in truth, it was her. She was the first one to judge herself. The next morning, for the first time in many years, Ayaka looked into the mirror again. It was still the same old mirror, but this time the reflection showed a gentle face, eyes no longer clouded by sorrow, but with something peaceful, not because she had become more beautiful, but because her heart had become clearer. From that day on, Ayaka continued living in the same village, quietly doing her daily work. But something had changed. She no longer lived like a shadow. She walked through life with full presence, no longer trying to earn love, no longer straining to be perfect. She only had one intention, to keep the mirror inside her heart clear. And she knew, if someday the image became blurry again, she wouldn't blame herself. She would simply smile and gently wipe away the dust. Some pain doesn't come from the outside. It's not caused by others, not because the world is cruel or life is unfair. It comes from somewhere deeper, a place inside where we've allowed dust to settle on the mirror of our soul. Ayaka's story, the girl who lived like a shadow, reflects a truth: we don't suffer because the world is wrong. We suffer because our minds are clouded. So what is that dust? It's the shame of thinking you're not good enough. It's the fear of judgment that makes you live for others' approval. It's old wounds that haven't healed, clinging to your every action. It's the voices from your past that became the definition of who you think you are. We carry these layers of dust with us, and every day we see the world, not through a clear lens, but through a warped mirror inside. We see others, ourselves, and the future, through doubt and fear. Here's a simple yet powerful image. If you place a glass of clear water in sunlight, it reflects a beautiful rainbow on the wall. But drop a single drop of ink, and the light is still there, but tinted black. It's not the sun that changed color. It's the water that lost its clarity. Your mind is the same. When it's clear, everything is seen as it is. When it's murky, everything becomes distorted. The Buddha once taught in the Anguttara Nikaya, when the mind is cleansed, the world becomes pure. But how do we cleanse the mind? Not by running away from the world, not by forcing others to change for us, but by cleaning the mirror inside every day. You can begin gently. Each morning before reacting to others, ask yourself, is my mind dusty today? When someone upsets you, instead of reacting right away, pause, am I responding to them or reflecting my own dust? And when you look in the mirror, don't just examine your face. Look at the feeling. look as if you're meeting an old friend inside you. Modern science is starting to affirm this too. A study from Stanford University found just 5 minutes a day of looking inward reduces over 40% of negative emotional reactions in social interactions. This means you'll find it easier to accept, forgive, and feel at peace simply by observing yourself before rushing to judge the world. Try it. You don't need a long meditation. You don't need to retreat into the mountains. Just wipe your inner mirror each day with stillness, with mindful breathing, with an honest look at yourself, and you'll begin to see the original light that life has always been shining towards you. Because that light, it never went away. It was only the water that became murky and the mirror that hadn't been cleaned in a while. Only when the mirror is clean can the light pass through. Likewise, when your mind is washed by mindfulness and compassion, you are no longer shaken by praise or criticism, nor by how others look at you. There are moments in the midst of our busy lives when we suddenly ask ourselves, why am I living? Am I creating anything that truly matters? And even deeper, if I disappeared tomorrow, would anything in this life still need me to keep the flame alive? These are not lofty philosophical questions. They are the quiet ache in many hearts, especially when what we do each day seems unnoticed, unthanked, and unrecognized. But does the value of light depend on applause, or does it lie in simply shining, even when no one sees the flame? There's an ancient teaching in the Mahaprajnaparamita Shastra. One who cultivates the path is like a lamp that shines into darkness. They seek no fame, cling to no gain. They only wish for all beings to find their way. On a mountain slope outside the ancient capital, where pine forests stretch like a fairy tale curtain, and the breeze carries the scent of tree resin, there stands a small temple called Eternal Light. No one remembers exactly when it was built. They only know that each night from among the silent trees a small light appears, like a quiet heart breathing softly in the stillness of the land. The temple is modest, no golden rooftops, no resounding bells. Its roof is covered in moss, the wooden hallway creaks beneath each step. But one thing has remained unchanged for over 40 years. Each night that lamp is lit. The one who keeps that light burning is an old Zen monk named Dogen. Not the famous Dogen of Japanese Zen, but an unknown monastic living in seclusion, never leaving the mountains, never teaching in grand halls, never appearing in books or media. He had only one vow: every night I will light a lamp, in case someone loses their way in the forest. Villagers say that even in winters when the snow piled up to the temple roof, that light never went out. On stormy nights when thunder roared and the mountain trembled, the monk would still come out to the corridor to kindle the flame. Not because someone asked him to, not for praise, but simply because someone might be walking in the dark. One early spring evening, as cherry blossoms fell like a gentle rain, a lost merchant named Tishi arrived at the temple seeking shelter. He was a successful man used to noise and fast-paced living. Everywhere he went, he carried goods plans and a heavy, invisible burden in his heart. That night, after a simple meal of brown rice porridge and pickled radish, Dogen invited him to sit on the porch. There were no sermons, no lofty teachings, just two people, one elderly, one middle-aged, sitting in silence, listening to the wind and gazing into the valley Below them, tiny lights flickered. From someone's kitchen still lit from a mother's room, where a lullaby is sung from an altar with incense burning. Each little light, amid the sea of darkness, looked like a star that had wandered onto the earth. After a while, Tishi asked, "Master, may I ask, why did you choose to live in such seclusion? With your wisdom and cultivation, you could be teaching in a major city holding status guiding many students. Yet here you are in a quiet temple, lighting a lamp in the forest every night." Dogen did not answer right away. He gazed into the distance. A breeze passed by, scattering cherry petals onto the wooden porch. "Do you see those lights down there?" he asked. "Yes," Tishi replied. "The ones in the village, the kitchen lights, the lights in people's hearts, the lights of dreams not yet extinguished. I sit here and light the temple lamp, not because I think someone will come, but because someone might." He stood up, walked over to the brass lamp, wiped the soot, added oil, adjusted the wick. The flame sparked, casting a gentle golden glow. Not dazzling, not enough to light the entire forest, but warm enough for a traveler to find their direction. That light extended like a whisper. "I am here in case you need me." Returning to his seat, Dogen said, "I don't live here because I have no other choice. I live here because I believe sometimes a lamp doesn't need an audience to be worth lighting. I light it for strangers, for the weary, for myself, for wandering souls who don't know they're lost." Tishi fell silent. As a businessman, he had always believed actions must bring results, measured by profit impact, or at least recognition. But tonight he faced a light, lit for no one, and he felt. That was what made it priceless. Dogen didn't preach. He didn't tell Tishi to let go. But in the silence, the merchant suddenly realized how heavy his heart had become, with expectations, competition, the need to always be more. That weight began to lift, simply by being in the presence of such quiet simplicity. The next morning before leaving, Tishi saw Dogen watering the mustard greens outside. He worked slowly, sleeves damp steps, soft as if floating. No rush, no desire to be seen. Each action, from lighting the lamp to watering plants to picking vegetables, carried a wordless message: I am here, silent, but whole. Back in the city, Tishi shared the story with friends, not as an extraordinary tale, but as a gentle reminder. Not everything must be seen. Not every light is meant to shine for others. Some lights exist simply to keep our own hearts warm. There was no drama in the story, no plot twist, no climax, and yet, its spiritual power ran deep. Greatness does not define meaning. In Zen, meaning doesn't come from scale. It comes from presence, from an unwavering heart, from small acts, done with mindfulness and unconditional compassion. One person doing one small thing, with full sincerity, touches the very heart of the path. The lamp that Master Dogen lit each night, though small, had not gone out for 40 years. It never lit up the world. It wasn't written into history books. No one called his name in grand halls. But that night, it illuminated something in the heart of one weary traveler. A simple flame, enough to slow down a life moving too fast. And that lamp, not knowing who would come, not needing to be seen, was lit every night for one reason only: to be true to his own heart. In today's world, many of us are trapped in a subtle pressure. I must do something big, loud, extraordinary, to be worthy. We think value comes from visibility. The more people who know, the louder the impact, the more valid it must be. But in the Buddha's teachings, everything is measured by the heart. Why do you act? For whom? From where inside you is this action born? A lamp lit for fame easily fades when no one's watching, but a lamp lit from compassion can burn quietly, steadily, without ever needing praise. I'm reminded of an old image from the scriptures. A pinch of salt in a cup makes it salty, but the same salt in a lake disappears. Our hearts are the same. If we live in the cramped space of ego, everything we do becomes distorted by craving, fear, and calculation. But if our hearts are wide like a lake, we can receive everything with calm, like Dogen lighting a lamp every night, not to be known, but because it is the right thing to do. You may ask, light a lamp. For whom? If no one comes, is it meaningless? The answer lies in something very simple. Light doesn't ask who will see it. It simply shines. And sometimes lighting a lamp for the one who never arrives is the noblest act of all. Because it proves you don't live for the reward. You live from your own spiritual integrity. That is the quality of loving kindness, the quality of a heart that no longer depends on recognition. That lamp in the forest wasn't meant to guide hundreds. It was a quiet promise to life. If someone gets lost, there is still a light waiting. Are you lighting such a lamp in your life? A lamp no one sees, no one knows, but you know, it's still glowing in your heart. And that is enough. The core teaching from this story is selfless service, to serve without condition, not to be seen, not to be repaid, not in hopes that someone will remember you later, but simply because it is the right thing to do. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha teaches one who lives for others has not lived in vain. Lighting a lamp is not some distant religious symbol. It is a concrete way of living. A whisper from within that says, I will keep doing good, even if no one applauds. And you don't need to be a Zen master or ascetic to do this. Just ask yourself each day, what did I light up for someone else today? Was there a word I spoke without needing a reply? Was there something I did, even small, that kept my heart kind? A study from Harvard University found people who regularly practice unrecognized acts of kindness, like silently holding doors, tidying up without credit, or helping the vulnerable without announcement, show 37% higher natural serotonin levels than those who don't. In other words, giving without conditions isn't just a virtue. It's also a way to care for your own nervous system. Lighting a lamp for others is also lighting your own heart, and each selfless act is a candle, quiet, steady, strong enough to push back the dark. Have you ever felt like your heart was heavy, as if carrying a stone? Not a physical one, but the weight of resentment, past wounds, and painful memories you haven't been able to let go of. We go on living, smiling, working, but deep inside something remains heavy and silent. And that weight makes every step slower, more exhausting even if no one around us can see it. Some people carry anger for years. Some hold on to injustice until it becomes part of their very being. Some never say a word, but lie awake each night with a mind full of what-ifs and should-haves. And then at the smallest trigger, all that built-up weight spills out like a flood that sweeps away both themselves and those around them. The Buddha once taught, Hatred is never appeased by hatred. Only by love is hatred appeased. This is an eternal law. That teaching is like a doorway, offering us a way to finally put the stone down. The story that follows is about a woman who carried that heavy stone in her heart for many years until she met a Zen master. In a quiet village nestled in the highlands, there lived a woman named Hana. Villagers often spoke of her as the model of a hard-working, capable woman, skilled, diligent, full of resilience. She once had a happy home, filled with laughter, a loving husband, and 2 kind children. But like a quiet wind that sweeps everything away, that happiness vanished. The man Hana trusted left her running away with another woman from a distant town. He disappeared without a word, leaving behind a hollow house and 3 broken hearts. But the deepest pain wasn't the leaving, it was the betrayal. From that day on, Hana carried in her heart a quiet, heavy resentment, like a stone at the bottom of a well, still but dense. Life went on. Hana worked every day in the sun and wind on the terraced fields. But something in her had died. She became irritable, short-tempered, without reason. Laughter from neighbors annoyed her. She avoided friends by saying she was too busy. Even her own children, once the joy of her life, became unintended targets of her unresolved pain. At night, in silence, Hana would lie awake and wonder, why did I have to suffer like this? I lived well cared for my family. What did I do wrong? But each question only built up the wall of blame inside her heart, like layers of cold cement sealing her already burdened soul. One day, as she was hauling water from the village's ancient well, she noticed a familiar figure sitting beneath the large mango tree near the temple. It was Zen Master Daisuke, an elderly monk who rarely spoke, but whose every word made people pause and reflect. His eyes were half closed, as if listening to the wind moving through the leaves. Something drew Hana closer. She set down her buckets, and like unlocking an old chest, she began to speak. She told everything about the husband who left the nights she cried alone, the simmering anger, and her sense of injustice. When her final words spilled out, so did her tears uncontrollably. Master Daisuke said nothing. He simply reached for a large stone nearby, handed it to Hana, and gently said, "Carry this stone around the temple courtyard 3 times. Hana was stunned, but without asking why she obeyed. Each step grew heavier as the weight pressed down on her arms. By the first round, her hands tingled. By the second, her shoulders ached. By the third, she was out of breath, her arms trembling and numb. When she returned and placed the stone down, she clutched her sore limbs and gasped, "I'm so tired, Master. My arms hurt." The Zen master looked at her, his gaze kind but deep. "And yet you've carried a heavier stone in your heart for years. Do you see now how exhausting it's been?" Hana froze. There was a long silence, not uncomfortable, but as if someone had finally opened a locked door. Her tears fell again, but this time without hiding. She knelt, buried her face in her hands, and cried as if for the first time, not from blame, but from release. From that day on, Hana began practicing something new. Each time anger or resentment arose, she closed her eyes and imagined herself holding that stone again. Then she took a deep breath and in her mind placed the stone gently on the ground. At first, it was hard. Sometimes she had to breathe dozens of times before she could let it go, but she didn't give up. A year passed. Hana was no longer the angry woman the villagers once feared. She began to smile again, not a forced smile, but a genuine one. One morning as the sun rose over the mountains, Hana stood in front of her mirror. She saw a familiar face, but her eyes were different. There was something light, free, as if after all these years the stone in her chest had finally dissolved not through escape, but through direct confrontation. From then on, Hana lived like someone new. Not because the pain had vanished, but because she no longer carried it with her every day. This story, though lacking drama or miracles, still touches deeply. It reminds us of a simple truth. Sometimes what exhausts us isn't life, but how we carry our stones over such a long distance without ever putting them down. Hana's story reveals a quiet but profound truth. We don't just suffer because of what happened, but because of how we continue to hold on to it. The person who hurt us may be long gone, but the pain stays because they still cling to it. And as we grip it tightly, it seeps into our words, our actions, even our breath. We carry that heaviness into new relationships, new situations, and unknowingly pass it on sometimes to the very people we love most. Hana is not the only one carrying an invisible stone. Many of us are carrying one too. Maybe it's an old grudge, an unhealed memory, or a deep betrayal that has nowhere to go. Zen doesn't ask you to deny that pain. It simply invites you to look at it honestly, call it by its true name, and when you're ready to put it down. Like a backpack you've worn for far too long. At first, it seems light, but over time, your shoulders stiffen, your back bends, and your breath grows shallow. Only when you take it off do you realize how long you've denied yourself relief. The strange thing is, no one made you carry it. You got used to it until it felt like a part of you. And that is the root of suffering. Not the circumstances, but our identification with them. So the question is, do you truly want to keep carrying it? If your answer is no, then you don't have to forgive all at once or let go perfectly. You just need to take one small step. See the stone in your hand. That moment of awareness is the beginning of freedom. The teaching here is this: letting go is not weakness. It is an act of self-compassion. The Buddha once said in the Metta Sutta, hatred is never ended by hatred. Only love can end hatred. This is the timeless truth. That line doesn't demand sainthood. It doesn't pressure you to forgive immediately. It simply reminds you, if you're still gripping the stone of anger, you're the one hurting first. In truth, you don't need to do anything grand to begin letting go. Just recognize what you're carrying and allow yourself to put it down, even for one breath. The next time you're angry, imagine your hand clenching a stone. Breathe in, become aware of the stone's presence. Breathe out and gently invite your hand to release. If you can't release it fully yet, just breathing with the intention to release is already a step forward. Science supports this too. A study from the University of California found that people who practiced guided emotional letting go just 5 to 10 minutes a day for 3 weeks reduced their cortisol, the stress hormone, by up to 30%. They also significantly improved sleep and emotional well-being. Remember, letting go is not about forgiving the other person. It's about freeing yourself from the invisible chains, so you can move forward unbound by the past, so you can live, not just survive in anger. And in that way, letting go becomes one of the most profound expressions of compassion for yourself. In this life, there is an arrow that travels faster than the speed of sound, the arrow of judgment. Have you ever been wounded by a single word of criticism? Or have you, in a moment of anger, hastily placed a label on someone that could never be taken back? Judgment often comes like a reflex, but its impact lingers like a wound that refuses to heal. The Buddha once taught, "Do not judge a person by appearance by a single word or by past mistakes. Observe their awakening through how they live in the present." So why are we so quick to trust first impressions? Why does the mind seek to label others just to feel more secure in itself? In the Zen tradition, there's a story about Zen Master Joshu, a wise teacher who lived simply, but whose every word reflected the true mind of the one before him, like a mirror. Today's story is about the arrow of judgment and how not to let it wound you. It was a clear autumn morning. The sky was still like a lake that had just calmed. A soft breeze swept through the Zen garden, lifting golden leaves into a quiet spiral. In the temple courtyard, an elderly monk, Master Joshu, was slowly sweeping the fallen leaves. The bamboo broom in his hands moved steadily, making a dry, rustling sound against the stone floor, as if each stroke was a mindful breath. His back was slightly bent, his white hair like morning mist. His steps were slow, but grounded, as if he wasn't just sweeping leaves, but sweeping away the invisible dust of the world. There was no wasted movement, no unnecessary sound. He and the broom seemed to become one, no one serving the other, only pure presence. At that moment, a young traveler happened to walk past the temple gate. He looked sharp, intelligent, well-dressed, like someone who had just stepped out of a lecture hall or a philosophy institute. His eyes were sharp too, but behind them was a trace of arrogance, the kind that often comes with immature knowledge and the belief that one already knows enough. As he passed the gate, his eyes paused on the old man sweeping. Seeing the silver hair and the bent back, the young man called out half-joking, half-serious, but with a tone that clearly held some mockery. "Hey, old man, is there a Zen master in this peaceful place?" The old man paused, looked up. His eyes were not dull but clear like an autumn lake. There was no anger, no pride. He simply replied in a calm, gentle voice, "No, there is no one like that here." The young man raised his eyebrows, slightly smirked. He nodded as if confirming a suspicion, perhaps disappointment, or the belief I was right. Just an old gardener. He turned and walked away from the temple. Not long after leaving, he encountered a lay devotee, an elder who knew the temple and its residents well. The elder recognized him and asked excitedly, "Did you just come from the temple? Did you meet Master Joshu?" The young man looked surprised. "What, I only saw an old man sweeping leaves in the yard." The elder stared at him, visibly stunned. That was Master Joshu. He is one of the most profound Zen masters still living. You just missed an incredible opportunity. The truth struck silent, but cutting deep. The young man froze. A strange wave of emotion rose inside: confusion, shame, and bitter regret. He hurried back to the temple. His heart pounded. His legs trembled. When he arrived, Joshu was still sweeping leaves as if their earlier exchange had never happened. The young man knelt down, bowed, low voice shaking. "Master, I'm sorry for my arrogance. I didn't know." Joshu paused. He looked at him. There was no blame in his eyes, only calm and compassion like a lake undisturbed by a falling stone. He smiled gently and said, "Each person only sees what they carry in their heart. It's not my fault if you saw a mere old man. That was what your eyes chose to see." The words fell like a whisper, but struck like a stone into a deep well, silent and echoing. The young man had nothing more to say, because no justification could erase the truth. He had looked through the lens of ego, not through the eyes of Zen. He had come looking for a master of his imagination and missed the master who was already there. Joshu didn't explain himself. He didn't need to prove his presence. And in that calm refusal to prove lay his greatest teaching. That day, the young man didn't receive a formal Dharma talk. He wasn't given a koan or a long sermon, but he received one of the deepest lessons of his life through the painful experience of his own arrogance and the high cost of assumption. From that point on, he no longer sought Zen in sacred temples or outer forms. He learned to look with the heart, not with the eyes. Because Joshu had shown him, we don't see people as they are. We see them through the filter of who we are. Joshu's response was not just the kindness of a wise elder. It was a wake-up call for all of us. When your gaze is clouded by judgment and ego, you can't see the truth, even if it's standing right in front of you, simple, calm, and ready to welcome you. What Joshu revealed wasn't about his appearance or reputation. It was about the way the young man perceived the world. In every encounter, the other person isn't just who they are. They are a mirror, and what you see in them sometimes says more about your heart than about theirs. In the Buddha's teachings, this is known as the obstacle of a discriminating mind. When the mind is entangled in names, roles, and appearances, we fall into illusions of ego and distorted views of others. Suffering doesn't come from the other person, but from our own unclear perception. Imagine wearing glasses covered in dust. No matter how beautiful the world is, you see only blur. And if you try to change the world instead of cleaning your lenses, you only create more confusion. The same is true for the mind. When it's clouded by pride, defensiveness, or stubborn ideas, even if the truth is present, you'll miss it. A scripture says, "When the water is muddy, the moon doesn't appear." But the moon never leaves the lake. The truth has never left. It patiently waits for your mind to become clear again. Perhaps the greatest teaching Joshu ever left behind was not in words, but in his quiet, simple presence. No need to prove who he was, because truth doesn't need a name. The awakened don't need a title, and truth only appears when you let go of your own biased view. From this story, there are 3 practices you can bring into daily life, not as abstract philosophy, but as tools for living more mindfully and deeply. First, any time you're about to judge someone, even just in thought, pause. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, with what kind of mind am I seeing this person? That question may seem simple, but it opens a door to awareness. Are you seeing them with stillness or with reaction? With trust or suspicion? With generosity or with fear of being hurt? Second, practice mindful communication. Don't rush to conclusions before understanding. Don't turn first impressions a glance, a voice, an appearance into the final truth. Every person is like a river, always changing. If you judge them by a single moment and believe you've seen their whole self, you've fallen into your own narrow view. Third, instead of always looking outward to find fault in others, turn inward. Ask what inside me is causing such a strong reaction to this person. That question brings you back to yourself and helps heal the invisible wounds that still shape how you see. A study from the University of Toronto found that people who regularly practice mindfulness meditation reduced their tendency to judge others by more than 33% compared to those who didn't meditate. Why? Because when you understand yourself, you no longer need to control others to feel safe. The path of overcoming judgment not only helps you live more peacefully with others, it also opens a space within you. And that space is where truth can finally be seen. There is a kind of suffering that most people don't even recognize the pain of not letting go. Not because we can't, but because we don't realize we're still holding on. In the Connected Discourses, the Buddha once asked a group of monks, if someone holds a burning coal in their hand, where does the pain come from? From the coal or from holding it too long? And he answered, it is the holding that causes suffering. Have you ever been upset by something? Someone said and kept it in your heart for months. Maybe they forgot long ago, but you still carry it like an arrow embedded in your chest. In truth, many of the wounds we live with weren't caused by others, but by our refusal to remove the arrow. This next story begins with just such an image, an arm held up endlessly, simply because no one ever told us, you're allowed to put it down. A man once came to a Zen master, filled with rage and despair. His face showed deep fatigue, but the pain he carried wasn't physical. It was an old emotional wound. When he had calmed down and sat in silence, he began to speak, his voice trembling from years of bottled-up emotion. Master, many years ago someone insulted me. In a way I can never forgive. I've never forgotten the shame of that day. Even now, whenever I think of it, it feels like fire burning in my chest. I can't let go. I don't want to forgive, but I also don't know how to live in peace. The Zen master listened completely silent. No quick advice, no loud preaching, just calm, mindful presence. Then the master gently stood up. He picked up a glass and slowly began pouring water into it. He poured and poured until the glass was full. But he didn't stop. Water began to overflow, spilling across the wooden table. The man jumped up. You're spilling it. The water's all over. The master smiled. He looked him in the eyes and said softly, so are you. You've been carrying something that's already full, and yet every day you keep pouring in more anger, more pain, more blame. That cup has been full for a long time, but you've never thought about putting it down. The man went quiet. He had never thought of his emotions that way, as a cup he was filling. Day after day. The master continued. There was once a practitioner who was very strict in his training. Every day he meditated with one arm held high, a way to remind himself of awareness. At first, it was just a posture, but he held that arm up for years, never letting it down. Eventually, it went numb. It became paralyzed. Someone asked him, "Why don't you lower your arm?" He replied, "Because I'm afraid that if I do, I'll lose my path." But in the end, what he lost was his own body. The room fell still. The master paused, letting the story settle deep in the man's heart. Then he added his voice, lower, filled with compassion. Holding on to something for too long is like keeping your arm raised forever. At first, it might come from good intentions, discipline, mindfulness, but over time, that same act becomes suffering. You think you're doing the right thing, but in truth, you're hurting yourself. The man began to cry, not because the words were harsh, but because they were clear. He had spent years believing that letting go would mean weakness, that forgiveness would be defeat, that keeping the fire alive was the only way to protect himself. But he didn't realize that same fire had been burning away his peace day after day. The Zen master looked deeply into his eyes and said one last sentence so quiet it seemed to still the entire room. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means not letting the past become a burden in the present. Silence filled the space. The man said nothing more. He just sat there, still holding the glass, now cool. But something inside him began to shift. Not yet forgiveness, not full agreement, but a single moment of awareness. He realized he had the right to feel lighter. And sometimes one such moment is enough to begin the journey of letting go. In Buddhist teaching, suffering does not come from what happens to us, but from attachment. Not from the event itself, but from the way we cling to it in our minds. The Buddha taught, no enemy can harm us as much as an untamed mind. This teaching is like a mirror showing a truth that few dare to face. The pain you feel today may no longer come from the person who hurt you, but from the way you replay that memory inside, again and again. We often think letting go means giving up, or losing, or abandoning justice. But Buddhism doesn't ask us to forget. It asks us to understand. Because only when you understand deeply, you no longer feel angry. When you see clearly, there's no enemy to fight. Letting go is not weakness. It is the final step of wisdom. When you finally realize that clinging to resentment does not change the past, does not awaken the other person, but simply drains your own energy day by day. Imagine holding a heavy bundle of firewood, dry, splintered logs that press into your skin. At first, you carried them to build a fire for warmth, for protection. But then you never put them down. You carry them to bed, to work through the streets. You're afraid that if you let them go, you'll be left with nothing. But don't you see? Because you keep holding that bundle, you can't hold a bowl of rice, you can't hug a loved one, you can't reach for the sky. Resentment is just like that. At first, it may feel like self-defense, but over time it becomes a burden no one asked you to carry except yourself. And when you let it go, something miraculous happens. You don't lose power. You reclaim your freedom. In everyday life, you don't need to meditate for hours or climb a mountain to learn how to let go. Sometimes the practice begins with something small. When you feel irritated or overwhelmed, pause for just a few seconds. Ask yourself, what arm am I still holding up? Do I really need to keep it raised? This isn't abstract philosophy. It's a way to come home to yourself. Maybe you only need 3 deep breaths and a single quiet phrase, I choose not to hold on anymore. Just a whisper, but it can open an inner door. A door leading to peace, not by solving everything outside, but by changing how you face it from within. Modern science supports this too. A study from Stanford University found that when people learn to identify and accept their emotions rather than suppress them, activity in the amygdala, the brain's emotion center begins to calm down. In other words, when you choose to breathe, when you choose to acknowledge, instead of react, you are doing the very best thing for your emotional and mental health. Letting go doesn't have to be dramatic. You can begin by writing down one thing that's been weighing on your heart, a memory, a sentence, a lingering worry. Read it, then tear up the paper. Not to forget, but to remind yourself you saw it, you named it, and now you're ready to lay it down. Or simply each morning sit for 1 minute. Gently ask, what am I holding today? And if you find yourself holding a bundle of invisible firewood, try setting it down even just for a moment. In life, we've all had moments where we felt swept away by emotions like a kite caught in a storm. A single word, a memory, a worry, can pull our minds like dark clouds crossing a bright sky. Have you ever felt like that? When your mind is filled with anxiety, memories, irritation so much that you forget. Deep inside, there is still a wide silent space that never changes. The Buddha once said, just as the sky is never stained by the clouds, the true nature of the mind is never polluted by afflictions. Clouds may come and go, but the sky is never diminished, never lost. That is the nature of awakened awareness. And when we understand this, every emotional storm becomes a lesson, every wave a chance to return to ourselves. Today's story is about a man named Norbu, who once believed he was the storm, until he learned to recognize the sky within. Norbu was once a prominent merchant. He traveled across lands, built businesses, accumulated wealth and powerful connections. To others, he was the picture of success, decisive, strong, wealthy. But few knew that behind the handshakes and contracts was a man who often sat alone in the dark, haunted by memories he couldn't release. He carried fragments of the past, a cutting remark that still hurt, a failed deal that shattered his trust, a loved one who passed away while he was too busy chasing profit. These memories clung to him like thick gray clouds blanketing the sky of his inner world. Norbu often felt like he was living in a place of permanent overcast where no light could shine through, and everything felt heavy, even if invisible. One day, while traveling through a remote highland region, his car broke down in the middle of the road. With no other option, he walked to find shelter. Atop a distant hill nestled among pine trees, he saw a small monastery, a quiet dot of peace amid the vast wild landscape. Norbu knocked, asking for water. The abbot, an elderly man named Tenzin, calm in demeanor with bright, gentle eyes, welcomed him to sit on the porch and share tea. They sat together in silence, the wide valley stretching out before them beneath an open, breezy sky. Tenzin poured tea and asked, "Do you see the sky today?" Norbu looked up. Above them, clusters of white clouds moved slowly across the sky like silent travelers. "Yes, I see it, but there are too many clouds. It's hard to really see the sky." Tenzin smiled gently, eyes still fixed on the distance. "You're seeing the clouds, not the sky. Clouds come and go. But the sky is always there. And so are you. What you're thinking, what you're feeling, your worries, your sadness, your anger, they're just clouds. They'll pass, but your true mind, the sky, has always been there." Norbu furrowed his brow. No one had ever said anything like that to him before. A part of him wanted to believe, another part resisted. But how can I feel that inside me it always feels like storm clouds? Tenzin didn't answer right away. He pointed upward. Look, do the clouds cover the sun? Yes, but is the sun gone? No, it's only hidden. And you too, the clarity within you has never disappeared. You've just mistaken the clouds for who you are, instead of remembering you are the sky. The words fell like water on dry earth. Silence stretched. Norbu said nothing. He just sat there watching the sky. The clouds were still there, but this time he didn't try to push them away. He didn't ask when they'd leave. He simply watched as if for the first time in his life he allowed himself to sit still, do nothing, and resist nothing. He breathed deeply, and in that moment, something opened inside him, a space he had forgotten. No past, no future, no anxiety, no anger, just a vast, quiet spaciousness like the very sky he was staring at. Tears fell down his face and he didn't know why. Not because he was sad, but because he felt light, as if at last he had laid down something he'd been carrying far too long. The next morning before he left the monastery, Tenzin offered him a parting reminder. When your mind starts to storm, just pause. Breathe in and remind yourself, I am not the clouds, I am the sky. Don't try to push feelings away. Just remember, they don't define you. From that day on, Norbu began his journey back to himself. He didn't become a monk. He didn't leave society. He still worked, still interacted with people, still had moments of anger and exhaustion. But one thing changed forever. He no longer identified with the storms inside. Each time emotions rose, instead of reacting right away, he paused one breath, then whispered that phrase like a mantra. I am not the clouds. I am the sky. Over time, anger no longer controlled him. Fear no longer dictated his choices. He began to observe emotions the way one observes clouds. They come, they go. And in doing so, Norbu, once trapped in the past, found something money could never buy: inner freedom. What Norbu discovered is at the very heart of meditation. Do not identify with your thoughts or emotions. In Buddhist teachings, this is called seeing one's true nature, the recognition that your true self is beyond all mental phenomena. When you say, I am angry, you've made anger part of your identity. But the truth is, you are only experiencing anger. It comes, it goes. But you are the one seeing it. That difference is the root of freedom. Like Norbu, many of us live our lives caught in psychological storms. Every emotional wave knocks us down because we believe we must do something, fight, fix, or flee. But meditation doesn't teach us to run. It teaches us to sit, to observe without reacting, without judging. Imagine yourself sitting beside a great river. In the water flows everything: thoughts, emotions, memories, leaves, ripples, currents. You can jump in and be swept away. Or you can sit on the bank, quietly watching. That is the difference between being lost in the mind and living with awareness. Meditation doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. When you no longer fear emotion, you are no longer controlled by it. You can feel sadness arise and say, oh, sadness, that's okay. Stay a while, then pass. Like a cloud in the sky, no need to chase it away. It will dissolve on its own. And one day, you'll look up like Norbu did and realize behind every storm, the sky never left. You are that sky, vast, unshaken, untouched by passing clouds. The core teaching from Norbu's story is a foundational principle of mindfulness Do not identify with your emotions. This isn't some vague advice. It's a practice you can apply in daily life. The Buddha taught in the middle-length discourses, just as one standing on the shore sees another swept by the current, the practitioner watches the mind without being swept away by it. It's a vivid image. You are not the water. You are the one watching from the shore. So whenever strong emotions rise, sadness, anger, confusion, just pause. Breathe in. These are clouds. Breathe out. I am the sky. Just those 2 sentences enough to remind you. This feeling is not all of you. You don't have to deny it or suppress it. You only need to remember it is not you. After a few times, you'll begin to notice a gentle space opening up inside a gap between you and what's happening within you. Modern science calls this decentering the ability to step back from your thoughts and feelings rather than be fused with them. A well-known study from Harvard University found that just 10 minutes a day of practicing mind as sky for 8 weeks significantly decreased activity in the brain's anxiety center, the amygdala, while strengthening areas responsible for emotional regulation and calm. It shows. Letting go doesn't mean rejecting emotion. Letting go means realizing you are bigger than emotion. You are no longer the one being thrown by the waves. You are the one watching the tide roll in and out. And when you see this, you begin to live with deep inner freedom. Emotions still come, but they no longer break you. You still feel sadness, but you don't drown. You still feel anger, but you are not burned. And most of all, you remember the vast, silent nature of who you truly are. Have you ever found yourself in this state outwardly? Everything seems fine, but inside you feel trapped. Not in a literal room, but within your own mind. That's when you realize there are doors that are never actually locked, yet you cannot step through. Because the bolt isn't on the door, it's in your mind. People often think suffering comes from circumstances from others or from the past. But if you look closer, you'll see most suffering comes from rejection reaction, or trying to hold on to something inside yourself. The Buddha once taught, no chain can bind the one who knows how to let go. Then why are we still imprisoned in thoughts, memories, and feelings? The following story is a profound illustration of that truth. One autumn evening, as the night's dew quietly settled on the temple roof, the wind whispered through the bamboo grove in deeper reflection than usual. In that silence, a young meditator walked slowly across the brick courtyard, his mind heavy with things he could not name. He sought the Zen master, the teacher he had long respected, carrying visible anxiety in his eyes. When he bowed respectfully, the master only nodded his gaze, gentle, silent, like a calm autumn lake. Master, he stammered, I feel trapped. Every day I meditate, chant sutras, try to listen to your teachings. But in my heart there is still chaos. I cannot overcome doubt. I cannot open to life. The more I try, the more I feel like I enter a dead end. The Zen master remained silent, uttering no further questions, no consolation, no sermon. He quietly rose, motioned for the disciple to follow. They walked down a long corridor under the pale moonlight until they stopped before an old room at the back of the monastery. It had once been a meditation cell. No one used it now, and the wooden door bore the weight of years. The master pointed at the door. Go in. The disciple nodded and stepped forward. He pushed gently, but the door didn't budge. Master, it's locked. He turned and said, The master calmly replied, "Try again." He pushed harder this time, but still the door stood firm. "I believe it must be locked," he said awkwardly. At that moment, the master stepped forward. He spoke no words, simply placed his hand on the doorknob and pushed with a firm but gentle motion. Instantly, the door swung open. The disciple froze. He hardly believed his own eyes. I thought it was locked," he stammered. The master gave a slight smile, breath soft, yet carrying something deeply profound. "No," he said, "it was never locked. You just believed it could not open, and it was that belief that stopped you from pushing again." The meditator remained silent, his breath seeming to pause. Something inside him began to shift. The master stepped fully inside, turned his back, and spoke. "There are many doors in your life just like this. No latch, no lock, no one preventing you. But because of fear, because you think you're not capable, because you imagine difficulty, you stand still. You do not dare take the step. And then you conclude it must be a wall." He paused, looked back at the disciple with a stern yet not harsh expression. "Your own thoughts are the lock, not circumstances, not other people, but the false belief you built inside your mind." A cold autumn wind drifted by, making the master's robe flutter lightly. The disciple still stood at the threshold, but it seemed another door within himself had just opened. He said nothing. He bowed deeply, and when he lifted his head, his eyes looked clearer, not because of light in the room, but because a spark had awakened within his own heart. This story reflects one of the deepest aspects of spiritual practice. The mind is the source of suffering, but it is also the door to liberation. Some doors were never locked yet because you believe they cannot open. You stand still. And if you stand still long enough, you forget that you have always had the ability to step through. When you believe a door is locked, you no longer dare try to open it. Just like when you believe you don't deserve happiness, or you're not good enough to be loved, or you can never relinquish an old wound, you act on those false beliefs. You retreat, you shrink, you limit yourself. Every choice you make becomes influenced by an assumption that may not even be true, yet you live as though it were absolute truth. In Buddhist teachings, this is called clinging to a perception. You cling to mental images or thoughts you have created, then treat them as the foundation for emotion and behavior. You don't live in reality, you live in the apparently real you made up. And from there, you create a reality of suffering, not because life is inherently painful, but because your mind has bound you in faulty beliefs. Therefore, letting go is not an external act. It's not necessarily leaving, rejecting, or forgetting. Letting go is an internal transformation. It is when you change how you see, and the door will open by itself gently, easily, just like the master did. No force required. You only need to stop believing that it's locked. Imagine a person inside a spacious sunlit room with a door wide open, yet they huddle in a dark hidden corner because they believe the outside is dangerous. No one locked them in. No one bound them. Yet they live as if imprisoned. And the irony is, they keep the key in their jacket pocket. Our minds are the same. Often, no one forbids you to forgive. No one bars you from loving. No one forces you to suffer. Yet you choose to stay in pain because you believe you must, that someone else must change first before you can find peace. The most important thing you can do is not to run out seeking open doors, but to look inside and ask, which door have I locked within myself? Many people devote their lives to seeking opportunity, seeking peace, seeking a new start, without realizing they themselves shut off those possibilities long ago. Not because life denied them, but because their mind did. Are you holding on to an old hurt that locks your mind? A word you could not release a judgment, a childhood shame. These can become psychological chains making you think you're unworthy or unlovable. Are you afraid of something that hasn't happened yet, and so you lock down the present? Out of fear of being hurt, you refuse to love again. Out of fear of failure, you abandon a still unfinished dream. In meditation practice, you can begin by identifying one door in your heart you think is locked. Maybe it's a painful memory, a person who hurt you, or a part of yourself you forgot. Simply sit with it. Breathe in with kindness. Breathe out with letting go. This small act can begin a profound liberation. You don't need to force immediate change, but you begin to see that door has never truly been locked. Modern science agrees too. A study from Yale University shows when a person changes a limiting belief about themselves, brain regions related to motivation and joy activate. In other words, by changing how you think of yourself, you can reopen a whole biological system that supports happiness and freedom. So before asking, where should I go? Ask instead, which part of me have I locked? Perhaps you don't need to go far. You just need to return and try opening an old door with a new view. A door you once believed was tightly locked, but in truth has been waiting for your presence. Have you ever wondered why some people only need to say one sentence to make you flare up? And why, after the anger has passed, what remains is emptiness, regret, and exhaustion? Is anger a natural emotion or a habit that has been cultivated over years? In Buddhist teaching, anger is not the enemy, it is a sign of an inner world that has not yet been healed, a sign that you are carrying something for too long that you cannot let go of. The Buddha once taught, hatred is never ended by hatred. Hatred is only ended by love. This is an eternal truth. The journey continues with a story. Not long, not dramatic, but one that will stay with you long after you hear it. A story about Huineng, the sixth patriarch of Zen, and a strange gift, the gift of anger. One day, a stranger came to Master Huineng. He carried no offering, nor did he look like a seeker of wisdom. He entered the monastery with a heavy presence anyone could see. This was a man carrying anger that had been building for years. He neither bowed nor greeted anyone. He walked straight to Huineng, who was sweeping the courtyard, and said with contempt, "So you are Huineng. The one people say is enlightened. I see nothing special in you. You look no different from an old man sweeping the yard of a shabby temple." Words that could have hurt anyone, especially someone still clinging to pride or the need for recognition. But Huineng did not react. He simply looked up, his gaze calm like a lake without ripples. In his eyes there was no anger, no disdain, only full presence, as if even this man was part of the world to be embraced with compassion. Seeing no reaction, the man raised his voice. "Do you realize I'm insulting you?" Huineng gently replied, his voice soft like wind through bamboo. "I see." The answer was strangely serene. No defense, no counterattack. The man glared. "Then why are you not angry? Huining smiled, not the smile of a victor, but of someone who has nothing to lose, because I do not accept it. The reply startled the man, but his arrogance had not yet settled. He pressed on. Not accept. What do you mean? Huining set down his broom, looked at the man with eyes as deep as an ancient well, and asked, if someone brings you a gift, but you do not take it, to whom does the gift belong? The man hesitated, answering slowly, as if recalling something once heard. It belongs to the giver. Huining nodded. So it is. You brought here insult and anger, but I did not take them. Therefore, they still belong to you. Those words were more than reasoning. They were like a mirror shattering before the man's eyes, and in that moment he saw himself more clearly than ever. He stood frozen. His clenched fists slowly loosened. The fire in his eyes turned into tears. The anger he had carried as if it were his very life suddenly lost its grip. Like waves crashing against rocks, it dissolved. Silence filled the courtyard. Only the sound of leaves falling. The man, no one knew his name nor where he came from, bowed deeply before Huining. Without a word of apology, his whole body seemed to say, I understand. Then he left quietly, no longer arrogant, as though he had just laid down a burden carried for a lifetime. Huining picked up the broom and continued sweeping. The courtyard looked the same, but an anger had vanished. No miracle, no doctrine. Simply not accepting enough to cut off the chain of hatred. And that is the way. This story is not just wise teaching. It is a mirror reflecting your daily life. In every interaction, you face an invisible but weighty choice. Will you accept or not accept the emotions others hand you? People may throw at you harsh words, unfair actions, ungrateful attitudes, but the real hurt does not come from them. It begins the moment you agree to carry it as if it were your own. The Buddha's teaching never tells you to deny or escape emotion. He teaches that emotions are to be observed, not identified with. Anger, like all phenomena, has a beginning and an end. It only lasts if you keep feeding it, protecting it, replaying the story of why you're angry again and again. Then you are no longer the victim, you become the one burning your own house of mind with a fire lit by someone else. Imagine someone sends you a letter full of insults. If you don't open it, don't read it, don't believe it, can those words reach you? No. They remain just ink on paper until you give them power. Another's anger is like that letter. It may be sent in words, in attitude, in hostile silence, but it only has effect if you open it, dwell on it, and tell yourself, perhaps they are right. Huining never denied human feelings. He simply did not invite them to sit for tea in his heart. The lesson here is not to be cold or detached, but to keep your mind like a house with a door. You decide who enters and who remains outside. Compassion is not weakness, as many assume. It is the silent strength of one not controlled by others' emotions. A truly compassionate person is not easily swayed by anger, rudeness, or injustice around them. They can stand in the storm of another's emotions without losing peace within. And such steadiness is not accidental. It is the fruit of practice, moment by moment, through mindfulness. When you feel anger rising, even just a spark, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, do I truly want to accept this gift? Because indeed, the negative emotions of others are like a gift. If you refuse, they cannot touch you. But if you accept, cling, and react, then the gift becomes a burden you carry. Awareness is realizing you have a choice. You have the right to protect your peace as a treasure. No one can take it unless you give it away. Research from Stanford University has shown people who practice daily mindfulness, even just a few minutes, respond far less emotionally. Interestingly, they do not suppress feelings. They observe, acknowledge, embrace, and release them. Like clouds passing across the sky, they need not be pushed away, only not clung to. True strength lies here, knowing you have emotions, but not being ruled by them. And compassion, not weakness, is the courage of a heart steady like a mountain. There are moments in life when everything seems to collapse at once. Work falters, family is shaken, health declines, faith wavers. Have you ever felt as if a storm had struck you down, like a small tree caught in a whirlwind, bent and close to breaking? The Buddha once taught in the Dhammapada, just as a solid mountain is not shaken by the wind, the wise are not shaken by praise or blame. But how can one become that mountain when storms truly arrive? How do you keep from being swept away by emotion when upheavals come one after another? The story of a Zen master named Jin Shan is a living example, not because he never faced storms, but because in the middle of them he found strength and stillness. Jin Shan was once a young monk, deeply respected by his monastery. Everyone saw him as an ideal model of monastic life, rising before dawn, meditating in silence, chanting with devotion, working tirelessly. People would whisper, "He is steady like a forest stream, always flowing, yet always calm." But like every stream, one day the flood came. The abbot, his teacher and spiritual father, suddenly passed away. His absence left a void no one could fill. The monastery fell into chaos. Some monks left, unable to bear the pressure. Others stayed, but their eyes were heavy with doubt. Jin Shan, the one once seen as a symbol of steadiness, was now viewed as too immature to guide the community. Beyond the monastery gates, life was no better. Harvests failed, villagers grew angry, and rumors spread like wildfire. People said he was unfit, that everything was collapsing because of him. Each day, Jin Shan tried to hold together a crumbling monastery, absorb complaints, and keep himself from falling apart. One afternoon, rain poured without warning. Thunder shook the sky. Wind howled against the temple roof. Jin Shan said nothing to anyone, quietly walking up the stone path behind the mountain. In the storm, he moved like a sleepwalker, not seeking shelter, only a place of stillness for his mind. He stopped beneath a rock ledge. The cave was cold wind, whistling through cracks like mournful cries. He sat down on the wet ground. No longer the model monk, just a human exhausted. His mind swirled with questions no one could answer. Am I doing it all wrong? Have I betrayed my teacher's trust? Am I strong enough to carry this? Or am I only trying to hold something already broken? Lifting his head, he suddenly saw, through sheets of rain, the outline of a great mountain. The storm whipped against it. Trees bent, branches flew. Yet the mountain stood unmoved. No resistance, no complaint, no struggle. Simply standing as it had for ages. A spark lit within him. Perhaps my mind can be like that mountain. He closed his eyes, not to fight the storm, but to breathe with it, no longer resisting, no longer running from emotion. He sat still like the mountain. Wind roared, rain pounded, but within him a space of quiet began to grow, not forcing, not explaining, not needing to win, only pure observation, breath by breath. Thunder sounded further away. Worries dissolved like mist. And in that storm, he realized something simple but profound. The wind is the outer event. Fear is the inner reaction. When the mind is steady, wind cannot sweep it away. When the mind is calm, the storm is only a sound. The next morning, Jinshan returned to the temple. Nothing had changed. The monastery was still anxious eyes, still doubtful whispers still alive. But he had changed. He no longer tried to explain to be believed. He no longer reacted hastily to slander. He no longer strained to prove himself. He simply worked silently like a mountain in the village, cooking, sweeping, caring for the sick, listening to small pains. His presence, quiet, solid, began to touch others. A novice who had fled in fear returned. A villager, once angry, came to the temple gate for a bowl of rice. A senior monk who doubted him now bowed with rare respect, not because he spoke powerfully of truth, but because he quietly lived it, not like fire, but like a mountain, not resisting yet, never moved. And that very steadiness in life's storm became a refuge for many. No promises, no banners, just one person, one still heart sitting in the world like Jinshan. The story of Jinshan is not only a memory of monastic life, but a living metaphor for inner strength. In life, storms cannot be avoided, only the mind can learn to remain unmoved. In Buddhism, this is called samadhi, the strength that keeps you from being carried away by emotions, opinions, or adversity. We often think we can only have peace once problems are solved. But that is a trap. Peace does not come from controlling circumstances. It comes from becoming a mountain while circumstances rage. Imagine dropping a handful of salt into a small glass of water. It becomes too salty to drink. But the same salt in a vast lake is barely noticed. Pain, criticism, failure. These are the salt. But your mind is the glass or the lake that is what you can choose. If your mind is narrow, every wound overwhelms you. But if your mind is wide and deep, suffering dissolves in silence, losing its power over you. Meditation does not erase life's hardships, but it expands your heart like a lake, like a mountain, able to hold, able to endure. And when you stop fighting every gust of wind, you learn the art of standing still without being swept away. That is true freedom. That is wisdom. You do not need to retreat to deep forests or sit for hours to find this strength. You can begin in your next moment of difficulty. When someone criticizes you, when sudden trouble comes, instead of reacting instantly, pause, breathe deeply, and tell yourself, I am the mountain. Exhale. The wind is the wind. Place your hand on your chest. Feel your heartbeat. Just one such moment can reset your mind, helping you stand firm amid chaos. This is not only spiritual advice, modern science confirms it. A Harvard study showed that those who regularly practice mindfulness of body and breath have significantly lower cortisol, the stress hormone. Their brain regions for emotional regulation grow stronger, meaning you are not only more peaceful, you are also healthier, both body and mind. To practice a mind like a mountain does not mean withdrawing from life. It means being more fully present without being swept away by emotions or circumstances. When you are steady enough not to react too quickly, you begin to live from within, instead of being pulled by the world outside. And the miracle is this: every time you pause, breathe, and recognize, you are adding another layer of stone to the mountain of your heart. Day by day, you are not only living, you are building true inner strength. There are moments in life when losses drop us into an indescribable emptiness, not because we are not strong, but because certain absences become painfully clear. A loved one passes away. A friendship breaks, a familiar presence no longer appears in the daily scenes of life. A quiet question arises. What am I supposed to do with this emptiness? In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha once said, "The wise do not weep, nor do they suffer, because they know all conditioned things are impermanent." But to arrive at such composure is a long journey. And sometimes an empty chair in a familiar room becomes the starting point of that awakening. On a low hill, hidden among peaceful trees, there was a small temple with old tiled roofs and moss-covered steps. People called it the Temple of Gentle Wind, because at dawn, wind from the slope would slip through each pine branch, blow across the eaves, and create sounds as soft as nature's whisper. Only a few disciples lived there, simply under the guidance of an old Zen master named Kado. He was not known for grand lectures or lofty theories, but for a quiet presence and a gaze, one that seemed to see through every scratch on another's soul. Master Kado had the habit of rising very early. When the world was still foggy before birds grew lively, he swept the courtyard, watered the wildflowers around the temple, and meditated beneath the old plum tree by the veranda. He did not teach much with words. He taught by being fully present. One early autumn morning, as the sun peeked over the distance, Ryota, a young student, knelt beside him. His face was swollen from crying, and his eyes had no strength left. "My mother is gone." Ryota choked. "She was the last one. My last remaining family." Kado was not surprised. He seemed to have known from Ryota's eyes days earlier, but he said nothing, just nodded, poured tea, and slid a cup toward him. "I cannot bear this absence," Ryota said, voice breaking. "Each time I go home, I see my mother's chair by the window. She always sat there, made 2 cups of tea every morning, one for me, one for herself. Now I come home, and that chair is empty. It's only a chair, but it pierces my heart." The master remained silent, only the sound of tea filling the cup, a gentle warmth spreading in the cold morning air. The next morning, Ryota returned to the meditation hall as usual, but something made him stop short. In the window corner, where light streamed in each morning, stood a small wooden chair, its familiar shape sharp enough to ache. It was the very kind of chair his mother had used. On it sat a steaming cup of tea. Ryota was speechless. He sat beside the chair, placed his hands on his thighs, and closed his eyes. His tears did not pour like the day before. They fell lightly like a winter drizzle. "That chair is not for you to cling to your loss forever," Master Kado said in a low voice, "but for you to learn how to sit with absence and still keep gratitude." Ryota did not answer, but the next morning he came again, and the morning after that. Each day he meditated beside the empty chair. At first he still trembled. Later the tears lessened, then they quieted. Only the breath remained light and gratitude deep. One morning, like any other, Ryota entered the hall, but the chair was gone. He looked around uneasy, thinking someone had moved it or something was wrong. "Master, the chair, where is it?" he asked, a little worried. Master Kado turned his eyes gentle like a candle that had burned through many rainy seasons. "You no longer need it," he replied. Ryota stood still, not understanding at once. Then in that silence, he suddenly knew the loss no longer shook him as before. The pain no longer needed a symbol to be soothed. His mind had become spacious enough for his mother to remain without image, without object. From that day, Ryota meditated as usual, but without the chair beside him. There were only the wind, the birds, and an inner quiet that deepened day by day. People think meditation is about the breath, the posture, advanced techniques. Sometimes meditation is simply learning to sit with what you have lost, without resistance, without resentment. To sit beside the emptiness and still feel you are not alone. And from then on, Ryota no longer asked, "Where is my mother?" Instead, each morning he just smiled, looked out the window and whispered within, "Thank you, Mother, for still sitting here in me." Ryota's story is not only about a son who lost his mother. It is a mirror for anyone who has lost something deeply familiar, a person, a dream, or an old version of oneself. The empty chair by the window is not merely a seat left behind. It symbolizes the emptiness life leaves in our hearts, silent yet breathtakingly deep. In Buddhist teaching, impermanence is not an abstract idea. It is a truth breathing with us every day. Everything we love, everything we cling to, will eventually change, vanish, or go away. But the Buddha did not stop there. He taught all formations are impermanent. When this is seen with wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. That is the path to purity. The empty chair seen with a grieving mind is where longing pierces us every morning. But seen with awakened eyes, it is a sign of a love that truly existed. Every crack is proof of life. Every emptiness is an invitation back to gratitude. Because we were once loved, once cared for, and that has not been erased. It has only changed form. Imagine standing before a still lake. You drop in a stone, ripples widen, and then fade. Yet the lake remains peaceful and embracing, so do you. Though there are surges of feeling, sharp pangs of loss behind those waves, there is a mind able to recover and love again. The empty chair takes nothing from you. It simply emphasizes this: what once existed has transformed, and you, the one who remains, can sit down, breathe deeply, and touch that emptiness, not to endure it, but to open your heart. Your presence in this very moment is a miracle. Practicing with an empty chair is a simple yet profound method. It does not require setting an actual chair in your living room, just one moment each day before an old photograph in a familiar space or with a passing memory and you choose to stop. Not to run, not to fill it up, not to pretend to be busy. You simply breathe and invite that emptiness to sit beside you. In insight meditation, there is a practice called meditating with the absent object. Not meditating on the sound that exists, but on the silence after the sound has passed. Not meditating on the person in front of you, but on the emptiness when that person is no longer there. Not to cling to sadness, but to see how your mind responds to absence. Is it pain, longing, anger, fear, or simply a nameless emptiness? Modern science has begun to touch what masters taught thousands of years ago. A study from Harvard University shows that people who practice mindfulness during bereavement have a significantly higher capacity for emotional recovery. Their cortisol, the stress hormone, drops markedly compared to those who do not practice. What does that mean? That you do not need to get over loss like a race. You only need to be fully present with it in awareness. Try this tonight. Before sleep, imagine the person who once meant so much to you, who is no longer here, sitting beside you in silence. Do not try to say anything. Just sit together like old friends who understand without words. Inhale deeply. Exhale softly. And if you can smile gently, the empty chair is no longer a place reserved for sorrow. It becomes a symbol of continuation. That person is gone, but you are still living. You can still love, still remember, and still keep a part of them in how you treat yourself today, with gentleness, steadiness, and wholeness. You are no longer alone. You are continuing. Have you ever felt as if your heart were like a cup already full to the brim? A single word could make you cry. A small action could ignite your anger. Not because the event itself was so big, but because you had already been carrying too much. The story of the last drop is a deep reminder. Sometimes what hurts us is not what happens today, but everything we have never let go of. The Buddha once taught, "No one harms us more than our own untamed mind." When you do not realize how much you have been holding inside, even a final drop can make the cup overflow. One quiet autumn morning at a monastery hidden deep in the mountains, a young man came to meet a well-known old Zen master. He had just completed a long journey through many lands, visiting temples, learning from many teachers. His eyes shone with confidence, as if he carried a treasury of knowledge to present to this final master. When invited to sit, he began speaking right away. He told of the retreats he had attended, the books he had studied, the discourses he knew by heart. He spoke of meditation practices, the meaning of non-self, and profound experiences he believed had touched enlightenment. His words poured out, not from boasting, but from believing he was ready to go further. The old master sat silently, his gentle eyes calm like a windless lake. He did not interrupt. When the young man finally finished, as if releasing all he wished to say, the master still said nothing. He simply lifted the teapot beside him and began to pour tea into the cup before the visitor. Steam rose, the tea flowed steadily. When the cup was full, he kept pouring. Tea spilled over, ran across the table, and dripped onto the ground. Alarmed, the young man cried out, "Master, stop. The cup is full. You can't pour any more." The master looked up, meeting his eyes, and smiled a smile, kind and profound, holding centuries of silence. He said, "Yes, the cup is full, and so is your mind." The young man froze. "You come here to learn more," the master continued, "but you have brought too many ideas, conclusions, experiences you cling to. Your mind is full, like this cup. If you do not let go, do not open space, how can I pour anything new into you?" Silence fell. Wind rustled through the bamboo behind them. The young man bowed his head. For the first time in his journey, he felt no need to say more. That was his first lesson, not from a long lecture, but from a simple act pouring tea. That moment opened a door in his heart, a door only silence and symbol could reach. He understood, to learn first, you must forget. To receive first, you must let go. And to truly begin the spiritual path, sometimes what is needed is not to seek more, but to release what weighs you down. The cup must be empty. So must the mind. In Zen, the story of the overflowing cup is not only a gentle warning, but a profound symbol of a core principle, letting go. Not just letting go of possessions, but of knowledge concepts, even pride in what you know. When the mind is full, it cannot receive. When it is full of fixed views, prejudices, expectations, or unhealed wounds, then peace, insight, and awakening have no room to stay. Letting go in Buddhism does not mean abandoning. It means opening your hand. When you cling tightly even to knowledge, you cannot receive more. When you open, you can welcome what is greater. When you release concepts, you see the truth as it is. When you let go of the past, you can truly live the present. Picture a small table crowded with books, papers, cups, and trinkets. Even a small candle has no place to rest, not because the candle is useless, but because the table is too full. We are the same. When our minds are cluttered with noise, rigid beliefs, or wounds, we cannot release. Even the purest light has no space to settle. Your weariness does not come from the last drop. It comes from not noticing that the cup has been full for so long. The key is not to blame the final drop, but to stop, look deeply, and ask, am I carrying too much? We cannot expand the heart without lightening it. We cannot broaden the mind without letting go of what feels precious but has grown old. When you practice letting go, you do not lose. You create space for what is truer, lighter. You are not empty, you are spacious. And in that spaciousness, peace can enter. From this story, you can begin with something very simple, not a long retreat or a silent monastery stay. Just one moment before you sleep each night. Ask yourself, what did I add to my mind today? A word that hurt you, an expectation unmet, a flicker of anger not released. Instead of rushing to sleep with these emotions still filling you, spend a few minutes pouring them out. The simplest way is to write down just one thing, the heaviest burden of your day. No need for perfect grammar, only truth. Then close your eyes, breathe deeply 3 times. As you exhale, imagine pouring out those old drops from the cup of your mind to make space for tomorrow. Each night is a letting go. Each night is a cleansing. And the miracle is, you do not need to believe it at first. Just try. Neuroscience now confirms what Zen masters knew long ago. Writing out negative emotions combined with slow, deep breathing lowers cortisol, the stress hormone in the blood. The result? You sleep more deeply. The mind restores itself. Emotions settle by the next day. A cup washed each night is ready in the morning to hold fresh water. And your mind is the same. In life, there are moments when you feel stuck, not because there is no way out, but because your mind does not realize you are already standing before an open door. You feel confused by adversity, lost between choices, unsure of what is right, and so you look for someone to open the door for you. But have you ever stopped to ask, is the door I am looking for really locked? There is a simple yet powerful teaching in the Dhammapada. The mind is the forerunner. The mind is the creator. When the mind is impure, suffering follows like the wheel that follows the ox's hoof. What binds you is not the outer world, but your own limiting thoughts, fears, and attachments. Centuries ago, Zen Master Joshu and Master Yunmen had a simple exchange that still awakens practitioners today. It was a door without a latch, but to step through, you must first see it. One misty morning, Joshu, then a devoted student, quietly went to seek out Yunmen, a renowned elder teacher known for his unusual but piercing responses. Joshu bowed deeply with open reverence. "May I ask," he said softly but clearly, "when someone has not yet entered the gate of the way?" What is it like? Yunmen did not answer at once. He lifted his gaze toward the distance where early clouds drifted slowly across the mountain peaks. The silence was so deep that even the wind through the pines could be heard clearly. Then, as if carried by the mountain air itself, Yunmen replied, "A white cloud passes over a green mountain." Joshu was still. The answer did not sound like a teaching, but more like an image, a glimpse, a suggestion. His curiosity only deepened. Then he asked, "What about when someone has passed through the gate?" This time, Yunmen no longer looked to the mountain. He turned his head slightly toward the silent pine trees standing in the mist. His voice was soft, like whispering with the wind. "It is the same cloud, but it has disappeared behind the pines." Joshu felt something open inside his chest. Not emptiness, but a strange stillness, as if he had heard something beyond words. Yet he was not sure he understood. After a pause, he asked again, more slowly, more deeply. Then, "What is this gate really?" Yunmen looked directly into his eyes as if seeing beyond thought and effort. He said only, "The gate is the gate." No more words, no explanation, no example, just, "The gate is the gate." Joshu remained silent. His impatience to understand fell away. Instead, he felt a heaviness sink like fog dissolving, but leaving the view no clearer, and that very vagueness made him feel light, as if a door had opened but led nowhere, and needed to lead nowhere. He bowed. No thanks, no farewell. Only footsteps leaving the meditation hall slower than when he arrived. Inside him he carried not knowledge, not an answer, but something like morning light, impossible to grasp, but undeniable when it touches your face. Perhaps that was when Joshu truly began the way. Here Master Yunmen gave no philosophy, no theory of enlightenment or practice. He used an image simple, yet pointing to what lies beyond thought. He did not speak of the gate as metaphor. He showed Joshu that the way is not something you analyze nor a place you enter. As long as you think there is a gate and that you stand outside it, you create distance between yourself and the way. You divide reality with your own mind. And in that division, you never touch life itself. The gate may sound like meaningless repetition, but it is not wordplay. It is an arrow straight and sharp, pointing to reality itself. No interpretation, no embellishment, no symbol. The gate is this moment, the breeze at your window, the warmth of the teacup in your hand, the flicker of anger you just noticed in your heart. When you see that you are no longer outside the way, you are living it. It is like trying to grasp water. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips away. But when you open your hand, water rests there. The gate of the way is the same. The more you strive to get it, the further it seems. But when you release, returning to simplicity without judgment or search, the gate appears clear and never locked, because it was never closed. This is what Yunmen revealed not through words, but through presence. In Buddhism, there is a phrase directly pointing to the human heart. No detour through doctrine, no repetition of lofty ideas, just direct like an arrow into the restless heart. The exchange between Joshu and Yunmen is exactly that. It does not ask you to interpret or analyze. It invites you to see right here, right now. See what? See that your mind is restless for no reason, seeking the way as if it were something to acquire, expecting some dramatic enlightenment moment, and then you stop. You breathe. You look around, and suddenly you notice something small yet life-changing. Everything you need to live awake has always been here, not far away, not in an expensive retreat, not in an ancient book, but here in the breath, in the stillness of simply sitting. Try something simple each day, just 5 to 10 minutes. Sit quietly, no goals, no effort. Just observe the breath. Do not control it. Do not fix it. Just sit as if before a gate. You do not knock, do not push, do not pull. You only look, and then you see it was never locked. Modern science agrees. Harvard research shows just 10 minutes of daily mindfulness can lower cortisol, the stress hormone, while improving focus and reducing emotional reactivity. Meditation is not a religion. It is a way of returning inward, to see clearly things just as they are. And when you see no teacher is needed, for then your mind itself has become the teacher. There is a strange paradox in life. Sometimes those who cannot see are the very ones who believe they do not need a lamp. And sometimes those who think they see clearly behave like the blind. In daily life, have you ever wondered, why won't some people listen to advice even when it's obvious they are on the wrong path? Or why do some keep hurting others without realizing it? Perhaps because they do not know, or perhaps because they believe they don't need to know. The Buddha once taught in the Anguttara Nikaya, "The fool who thinks himself wise is truly a fool, but the wise, even when they know, remain humble and willing to learn." When our hearts are clouded by arrogance, we not only fail to see, we refuse to see. And when that happens, even if light is present, it cannot shine through. The following story illustrates this truth. The Blind Man and the Lantern, a lesson about pride, ignorance, and the cost of refusing to recognize our limits. One quiet night in a remote village, a blind man prepared to leave home to visit an old friend a few streets away. Though he could not see, he knew the way by memory. Each corner, each tree, each stone step engraved in his body and mind. So when a kind neighbor handed him a lantern, he only chuckled, "I am blind. No matter how bright this lamp is, it cannot help me see." The neighbor did not argue, but gently said, "True, you don't need the light to see, but others need to see you in the darkness. This light is not for you. It is for those who may be walking the same path." The blind man paused. He had never thought of that. Finally, he nodded and accepted the lantern. Inside, a small candle flickered with warm, glowing light. He began to walk. His cane tapped steadily against the ground. The night wind brushed his ears. Familiar feelings returned. But this time, something was different. There was light, not for him to see by, but so that he could be seen by others. Along the way, he met no one. Still a strange feeling rose in him, a mix of pride and joy. So I too can be a bearer of light. Even if I cannot see it, my light is protecting others from harm. I am not useless. Thinking this, he stood taller, his steps surer. He felt important, not because he could see, but because he was seen. Suddenly an impact. Someone coming the other way crashed into him. Both staggered. The blind man, angry, shouted, "How could you walk like that? Can't you see I'm carrying a lantern?" The other man, catching his breath, surprised, replied, "I'm sorry, but your lantern went out some time ago." Silence fell. The blind man froze. He was still holding the lantern tightly, but the candle inside had gone out long ago. He did not know. and because he was certain he carried light, he never thought to check. He believed simply holding the lantern was enough, forgetting that light does not come from the form, but from the flame within. He felt ashamed, not because of the collision, but because pride had blinded him once more, not in his eyes, but in his mind. He bowed to thank the stranger, then quietly turned back home. His steps grew slower, not out of fear of losing the way, but out of reflection. That night, for the first time in years, he truly understood what light meant, and what it meant to carry a lantern with no flame, believing it was still shining. The story of the blind man and the lantern may seem simple, but beneath it lies a profound teaching on ego illusion and ignorance. The lantern in his hand was more than a tool to light the path. It was a symbol of the Dharma, of the light of awareness. But that light does not last unless nourished. No flame burns forever without care, and no mind stays bright if forgotten in complacency. The blind man is a reflection of many in modern life. They once had light, a respected position, a good deed, a moment of awakening, and they believe that is enough. They carry the lantern of the past everywhere, proud of what they once were. But the light does not come from the lantern. It comes from the fire still burning inside. Imagine driving at night. Ahead, a car stands still in the road with no taillights on. You don't know if it is parked, turning, or moving. In a split second, you crash into it. Who is at fault? The car for not showing light, but also you for trusting only your own sight. The taillights, like the blind man's lantern, are signals for others to see us. If they are dark, no one sees us. But if we believe they are shining and never check, that illusion is dangerous. In spiritual practice, many also carry old lamps titles like senior practitioner, once enlightened, or already understanding the way. They think that is enough. But light is not in the title, it is in the flame still alive inside. Without daily self-checking, we will never know when the flame has gone out. From the story of the blind man and the lantern, 3 simple but deep lessons emerge for meditation and life. First, always check your own lamp. This means returning to yourself, mind-body presence in the moment. Each morning or night, ask, how is my mind today? Am I acting from awareness or from old habits? This question is like touching your lantern to see if it is still lit. If your mind is dark, even good intentions can cause harm. You don't realize. Second, learn humility to listen. The blind man reluctantly accepted advice to carry a lantern, but that advice once saved him. In life, we often think we already know, are already good enough, or have practiced for years. Yet sometimes a gentle word from another, a child, a friend, even a stranger, helps us check our own light. Never think you are bright enough. Always leave a space for outside light to reach you. Third, don't rely on past goodness. A kind act yesterday does not guarantee you are walking rightly today. Just as a lantern needs oil, compassion, and mindfulness must be nourished. Repetition in meditation, mindful breathing, and self-observation are not boring. They are tending the flame. And this is not just symbolic. A study at Harvard University showed when people practice a self-check-in habit, spending just 5 minutes each evening to reflect on their emotions, actions, and choices, their mindfulness levels rise significantly. Participants showed greater humility, slower reactions, and a 32% reduction in impulsive behavior. It is like checking your lantern daily to ensure the light is still there, so no one crashes into you in the dark. The story of the blind man reminds us sometimes we are the ones who cannot see the truth clearly, and sometimes another's silence is not because they are wrong, but because they see more clearly than we do. Have you ever felt drowned in the noise of the world, not only the sounds outside, but the endless echoes inside your own mind? Unresolved worries, memories returning again and again, nameless emotions that keep you from sitting still with yourself. In this age, silence is not easy to find. But what is more worth reflecting on is this: do you fear silence even when it is present? In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha once taught monks, there are two kinds of silence, the silence of the body and the silence of the mind. But it is the silence of the mind that is the true place of refuge. And this is the story of Pema, a young seeker of silence. Pema was a young monk whose eyes always shone with longing, whose thin shoulders carried a hunger greater than the thick scriptures he had studied the search for true stillness. Throughout his years in the monastery, he was the one who rose, earliest chanted first, and meditated last. He followed every rule, upheld discipline strictly, and was always the last to leave the meditation hall at night. Yet inside him was a restless wave that never ceased. Every night while the monastery slept, Pema lay awake listening to his own mind. Thoughts raced like wild horses. Why is my mind more chaotic the more I practice? Where did I go wrong? Am I just playing the role of a monk without touching the root of practice? His doubts grew so heavy that one day he could not remain. He went to the old master who had once taught him his first chant and said, "I ask permission to leave the monastery. I want to enter the mountains alone. I believe only complete solitude can quiet this mind." The master said nothing. His eyes were gentle like morning clouds. He only nodded, handed Pema an old blanket and a bag of dry rice. No advice, no attempt to stop him. Pema left. For 3 days and nights, he crossed forests, rivers, and steep cliffs, carrying both hope and loneliness. At last he reached an ancient cave deep in the mountains. No people, no lamps, only the wind whistling through cracks in the rock and the cold drip of water from the cave's roof. The first night Pema sat in deep meditation. No bells, no companions, only himself and his breath. He felt a strange ease, as if he finally sat alone with his mind. But the second night was different. Sounds turned sharp. The wind was no longer wind, but knives cutting into the dark. The slither of snakes, the flapping of bats all seemed to close in on him. Pema chanted, recited the Buddha's name, tried to steady his mind. But fear crept in like smoke, subtle but penetrating. He began to hear voices in his head, memories, doubts, images. They rose like ghosts in the night, uninvited. Pema realized the demons were not from the forest, but from what he had not faced inside himself. On the third night, Pema curled under his blanket, trembling, tears streaming down his face. He whispered like a plea, "Why is silence so frightening? Am I too weak to stay with myself?" And in that despair, something suddenly lit up, not from outside, but from memory. He remembered his master's words from years before. Silence is not where there is no sound. It is where the mind is no longer shaken by sound. That saying, once heard many times now, appeared like a flame in the dark. Pema stopped chanting. He opened his eyes and faced the night surrounding him. He heard the wind, the bats, the dripping water, but this time he did not resist. He let everything appear and pass. No labeling as dangerous, no pushing away, just sitting, truly still. 1 night, then 2, then 7. Each day, Pema ate a little dry rice, sat in meditation, and listened to every sound, as if it were part of himself. No more boundary between inside and outside. No fear, because there was no one left running away. A week later, Pema returned to the monastery. His fellow monks noticed no great change, the same eyes, the same walk. But when Pema bowed before his master, their eyes met, and the old teacher smiled faintly. No words were needed. For one who has walked through their own darkness, there is nothing left to prove. Pema's story reveals a profound truth. Silence is not about place. Even if you climb high mountains or lock yourself in a cave, if your mind is unsettled, you will still be surrounded by noise. Conversely, in the middle of a noisy city, if your mind abides in peace, that is still a temple. The Buddha called this inner silence a place where no external condition can shake you. In the Dhammapada, it is written, "Just as a solid rock is not moved by the wind, the wise are not moved by praise or blame." True silence is the result of a mind trained by mindfulness, by clearly seeing illusions, and by patient endurance with oneself. It is not a fake quiet that comes from fleeing the world, but the firm silence like a mountain while living within the world. I once heard a man say he feared the dark, but when asked further, what he feared was not the dark itself, but what he imagined inside it. Silence is the same. When you enter a space without sound, without movement, the ghosts of your mind emerge. Solitude is not what is frightening. It is the inner unease that makes us tremble. Silence does not come from extinguishing sound, but from no longer being controlled by it. It is not the absence of movement, but the full presence of a mind not pulled away. When the mind is vast, small noises cannot disturb it. And in that place, wherever you are, peace abides. What you can take into daily life is this practice right where you are. You don't need to climb mountains or enter forests to find peace. Instead of searching for absolute quiet, you can create your own inner cave, even in a noisy city, a busy family, or a pressured office. Each day, just a few minutes to sit still. No phone, no talking, no doing. Just sitting with the breath with yourself. Each morning before starting the day, close your eyes, place a hand on your heart, and listen to your breath going in and out. Simple as it sounds, that moment is the beginning of meditation. When you are truly present, you no longer need to escape. Even a chair in your living room with mindfulness becomes a meditation hall. When your mind is still, the world no longer confuses you. And when you can rest in each breath, then anywhere, even the most chaotic place, becomes a silent cave. And so, when Pema returned from the mountain cave outwardly, nothing had changed. But everyone who met him felt something different. His eyes no longer restless, his steps no longer hurried. That silence had become a quiet light radiating outward. In this life, we often associate enlightenment with a serene appearance temple imagery or a full lotus posture under a tree. But have you ever wondered, can someone in the marketplace carrying rice with muddy feet awaken to the way? And if so, where does that stillness reside? The Buddha once said, "When the mind is pure, the Buddha realm appears right here. No sacred place is required, no solemn scene, only that your mind is quiet. then even in a market, in a tea house amid noise, you can step through the gate of enlightenment. This story did not happen in a meditation hall, but in the busiest place, a marketplace, a place that seems contrary to meditation, yet it was there that one of the greatest enlightened figures in Chinese history, Huineng, revealed wisdom and compassion beyond outward form. At that time, Huineng was just an ordinary person in the world's eyes. Born into a poor family in the south, he had never been properly schooled and could not read or write. His life revolved around chopping wood, carrying wood, and selling it in the market to support his elderly mother. A life most would consider small, quiet, and unremarkable. But one morning, while carrying a bundle of firewood through a corner of the market, Huineng overheard a line from the Diamond Sutra recited by a passerby. Ongvo so tru ni sin ki tam. Let the mind not abide anywhere, and thus let that mind arise. Just one sentence. Yet like a lightning bolt from a clear sky, it struck the depths of his consciousness. Huineng stopped. He did not grasp the meaning of the words as text, but his whole being shook. A feeling of awakening spread as if something long veiled had just opened. Without hesitation, Huineng immediately asked where that sentence came from. Learning that it was the Buddha's words in the Diamond Sutra, and that the teaching was being spread by a Zen master in the north, named Huangren, the fifth patriarch of Chan, Huineng decided he would set out. That journey was not easy. Huineng had no money, no education, and no patron. But he had what few possess, a vow, burning like fire, unmoved by mockery or trial. After a long trek, he reached Dongshan Monastery, where the fifth patriarch Huangren was teaching. Yet the fifth patriarch did not accept him as a disciple in the usual way. Instead of bringing him into the hall for chanting, he assigned Huineng to kitchen work, pounding rice, splitting wood, cooking heavy, quiet tasks that drew no notice. Day after day, year after year, no lectures, no scriptures. Even so, the fifth patriarch clearly saw Huineng was not ordinary. His mind was still like a lake, sharp like a polished blade. Then one night, when the time was ripe, the patriarch secretly called Huineng into his chamber. In the deep quiet, no drums, no bells, no elaborate rites, the robe and bowl were transmitted. A silent succession. But the patriarch knew the turmoil this would cause. Huineng was a southerner rustic, uneducated. Most of the other disciples, northerners, learned and accomplished, would not accept a rice pounder as heir to the transmission. So he told Huineng, "Leave the monastery this very night. Hide yourself. Wait for the right time." By morning, the news that Huineng had received the robe and bowl spread through the monastery like a thunderclap. The disciples were shaken, angry, doubtful. A man named Hu Min, powerful, skilled in martial arts, known for loyalty to the patriarch, set off in pursuit, intending to reclaim the robe and bowl for the true path. Across rugged mountain trails, Huineng traveled alone, carrying nothing but the robe, the bowl, and straw sandals. Hu Min caught up with him at the foot of a mountain and shouted, "Put down the robe and bowl, I will not harm you. I only wish to return them to the patriarch." Huineng did not resist or explain. He gently placed the robe and bowl on a large rock, stepped back and said, "The robe and bowl are symbols. If you want to take them, take them." Hu Min stepped forward and reached out to lift them. Strangely, even with all his strength, they would not budge. An inanimate light object. Why was it so heavy? Sweat poured, his heart pounded, yet he could not move it. In that instant, it was as if an unseen force halted him. Within something collapsed, the eye filled with righteousness, knowledge, and judgment. He knelt before Huineng and said softly, "Please, Master, give me instruction. No long discourse, no scriptural citations." Huineng asked a single sharp question. "When not thinking good and not thinking evil, what is your original face?" Yu Min stood speechless. The question touched the very root of consciousness. No right or wrong, no good or evil. Only something bare clear, never arising, never ceasing. Yu Min bowed deeply. Huineng did not accept him as a disciple. He only said, "From now on, be a silent protector of the Dharma." Then Huineng continued his hidden practice. Many years later, when the time was right, he emerged to teach, laying the foundation for the Southern School of Chan, the lifeblood of Chinese Zen, and an inspiration for Japanese Zen thereafter. From a woodseller who could not read, awakened by hearing a single line of scripture that was Huineng. More deeply, it shows the power of direct seeing, no dependence on words or form. Such is Zen, not in books, but in the living wakefulness of each moment. In this story, there are no lofty scriptures, no mystical legends. There is only a common man carrying rice, grinding grain, living amid the market, and realizing the way. This is precisely the spirit of not relying on words and letters, a special transmission outside the teachings, not relying on speech or books, only on the mind's illumination amid ordinary life. Huineng's question strikes directly at the root of perception. When not thinking good and not thinking evil, what is your original face? That is when your mind is not carried away by right or wrong, love or hate, better or worse. What remains? It is you, unadorned, undefined, the primal face, untouched by the world's shaping. The enlightenment Zen points to is not the result of withdrawing from life, but of awakening within life. When you wash dishes, hold your child, or write an email, you can touch that original face. But only when the mind is no longer driven by old reactions. Imagine a lake if you keep stirring it with anger. Discrimination and craving the bottom will remain hidden. When you stop stirring and let the water settle, the bottom appears. It is not that you force the water to be still. You release what made it muddy. Enlightenment does not come from adding knowledge or special feats. It comes from subtracting less clinging, less contention, less seeking. When you stop labeling everything as good or evil, right or wrong, clear seeing, pure and bright appears. That is your innate wisdom. No one gives it to you. It has always been there waiting for you to return. The greatest value in Huineng's story is not the marvel of the robe and bowl, nor the title of sixth patriarch. It lies in this: an ordinary person without education or power can still return to their original face. The question is, do you dare to stop and look deeply? Most of our lives are spent in reaction mode. Something happens, a remark, a message, an unfriendly glance, and our mind is pulled away. We get angry, we feel sad, we are hurt, we defend. But if in that very moment you stop and ask, what is moving in me? You have already begun to return. You do not need to seek peace in a faraway monastery. In the midst of a busy life, you can pause and see the waves in your own mind. Do not judge. Do not try to push them away. Just look, with the gentle curiosity of a mother watching her crying child. Research from Harvard University shows that just 10 minutes of daily mindfulness can significantly reduce cortisol, the stress hormone in the blood. At the same time, brain regions related to cognition, emotional regulation, and decision-making develop more robustly. You do not need to force the mind to be still. Stillness does not come from suppressing emotion, but from looking directly at it without identification. When you clearly see the mind is not still, that very seeing is already a layer of stillness. In Zen, enlightenment is not a destination. It is the moment you are willing to stop, release the urge to control, and look deeply into yourself. That is when the original face begins to reveal itself, not because you have accomplished something, but because you have forgotten yourself a little less. Have you ever felt as if you were working hard in the dark, unseen by anyone? There are times we try to learn, refine, and train ourselves, yet the world seems not to notice. When others fail to recognize your effort, do you easily give up? Or do you continue to kindle the inner light, even if no one outside sees it? In an ancient scripture, the Buddha once said, "Be a lamp unto yourself. Be your own refuge." This was not just moral advice. It is a foundational truth of practice. True light does not come from outside. It begins within. Today's story is about a young disciple seeking that lamp, but not yet understanding that real light does not need others' recognition. It only needs to be sustained. At a Heiji monastery on a winter night, icy winds whistled past the tiled roofs, echoing softly in the stillness. Tiny oil lamps placed along the corridor flickered, breathing like small, fragile flames, yet steady against the dark. Dogen, the renowned Zen master, was still awake as usual. He often walked around the monastery late at night, not to check on anyone, but to quietly observe, like a silent breeze passing through souls learning stillness. In a corner of the meditation hall, Tishi, a young disciple, was carefully polishing each lamp. What seemed like a menial chore was actually part of practice. Keeping the lamp lit was like keeping the mind diligent. Suddenly, a strong gust blew through, snuffing out one lamp. Tishi froze. He fumbled for matches, hands trembling, not from the cold, but from a quiet anger rising inside. For months, Tishi had worked tirelessly, cleaning halls, preparing meals, following the schedule strictly. Yet no one praised him, no one mentioned his name in the teaching, no glance of acknowledgement. Day after day, his effort seemed like darkness, real, but unseen. At that moment, Dogen appeared. He stepped forward without sound, like a tree in the wind, and stood beside Tishi. Watching for a while, he asked softly, "This lamp, who lit it?" Tishi bowed and murmured, "I did, master, but the wind blew it out." Dogen gazed at the lamp, then nodded. "The wind put it out, but it can be relit. What if it is your own mind that puts it out?" The question struck Tishi's heart like a sound falling into a deep well. He froze, unable to answer. Dogen continued, voice still gentle, but cutting. "If you keep the light only when others see it, then it does not belong to you. But if you keep it burning even when no one notices, then you are the lamp." He turned and walked away, leaving Tishi alone with the newly lit flame. No lecture, no scolding. Yet Tishi's heart had never been so shaken. That night, Tishi did not sleep. He sat before the lamp for a long time. His anger faded. His craving for recognition dissolved. He understood the light is not to be seen by others, it is to be kept by oneself. Only when free of others' gaze does one truly begin the real path. This short story carries a vast teaching. In Buddhism, the mind is like a lamp. Without care, it is easily blown out by life's wind's praise and blame, hidden disappointments, unseen pressures, or growing self-doubt. But the light of the mind does not depend on being seen. It depends only on whether we choose to tend it or quietly abandon it. Dogen did not teach with rigid theory. He awakened with ordinary moments. His question, "Who lit the lamp?" seemed simple, but pierced deeply. He was not asking about action, but the root of practice. Tishi had let the winds of emotion extinguish his resolve. That danger is greater than any gust outside. Imagine sitting alone in a dark room, lighting a small candle. Its glow spreads gently, bringing peace. But then you begin to hope, hoping someone will walk in, admire you, validate you. When no one comes, you blow it out and return to darkness. We live like this often, practicing kindness, patience, or mindfulness. Yet if no one notices, do we still keep the candle burning? Or do we let darkness return, simply because no one confirmed it was shining? If light must wait for praise to shine, it was never truly yours. But if the lamp burns, even when unseen, then you have become the light. From Tishi's story, we see this truth. External recognition does not determine your real worth. In the Buddha's teaching, this is the spirit of non-self and self-reliance. The Buddha never encouraged awakening through applause or admiration. He taught clearly, by oneself is evil, done by oneself is one purified. No one can purify another. Practice in daily life is not about grand acts. Many think awakening requires hours of meditation or retreating into mountains. But sometimes simply washing dishes, mindfully sweeping in silence, or not letting anger rise when misunderstood, that is lighting a lamp. You can try a simple yet profound practice each morning. Light a candle. Not for decoration, but as a reminder, my mind is the light. Whether anyone sees it or not, I will keep it burning. Because in the end, what guides you in the dark is not praise, but the light you are brave enough to maintain quietly. On the path of practice, what causes many people suffering is not that they are unkind, lacking in wisdom or compassion. It is that they do not see themselves clearly. They live as if looking at life through a dusty mirror. Everything appears blurred, including the true face of their own mind. And then, when judged by others or caught in difficult circumstances, they stumble in confusion, asking, "Who am I? Why do I react this way? Why do I feel unworthy, inadequate, or unhappy?" The Buddha once taught in the middle-length discourses, one who does not see clearly into themselves is like someone walking in darkness, always stumbling over the smallest things. The one who learns to shine light inward has already begun the path of liberation. The following Zen story tells of a woman named Ayaka and an old mirror. Through it, we see it is not that the mirror is dim, but that dust has settled too long. It is not that we are faded, but that the mind is covered by layers of delusion. In a remote mountain region, where winters were not only cold, but so long that people forgot the warmth of the sun, there lived a woman named Ayaka. She was not a practitioner, knew nothing of deep meditation, nor lived in a monastery or forest retreat. She was an ordinary person carrying silent struggles, relationships, once everything now broken. Mornings when she woke, not knowing who she was as life swept her along. Ayaka carried this confusion to an old temple hidden deep in the pines. There, people said lived an aged Zen master long in years, quiet in presence and deeply understanding. Not because he had answers to all questions, but because he knew how not to answer cleverly. When Ayaka met him, she nearly burst into tears. She said she was tired, that her mind was like a winter sky dense with clouds, no space, no clarity, no direction. The master did not reply. He rose slowly, walked across the old wooden hall, and invited her to follow. They entered a small room behind the temple long untouched. Wind whistled through cracks. Dust lay thick on everything. Against the wall leaned a large wooden mirror, silent and forgotten. "Look into it," he said. Ayaka stepped closer and gazed, but the mirror was so clouded she saw only gray streaks in the darkness. "I can't see anything," she whispered, disappointed. "Yes," the master nodded, "because it is covered with dust." He handed her a cloth worn but clean. Without instruction, Ayaka began to wipe. Slowly, gently. The dust fell away bit by bit, as if something old was being lifted from the mirror or from her. Then she caught her breath. In the glass appeared a pair of eyes, her own, a gaze unfamiliar yet intimately known, as if rediscovered after many lost years. Then her face, her hair, the light from the window behind. The mirror brightened. But in truth, it had always been so. The dust was simply gone. The master stood beside her, eyes resting on her as if he had seen this before it happened. He spoke softly yet clear. "Your mind is the same. It has never been lost. It is only covered in dust. You need not become someone else. Only wipe away the dust." Ayaka said nothing, but her eyes shone, not because she understood everything, but because she touched again something she thought she could never find herself. The simplest things can be the deepest. Like the mirror, ordinary, yet holding one of Zen's core teachings, reflection of the true mind. The mirror never loses its ability to reflect. Though covered by dust, though dimmed by years, its nature remains to reveal. The problem is not the mirror, but the dust. The human mind is the same. No one is born with a dark mind. Its nature is clear, still, and aware, like a quiet lake deep in the forest. But with time, dust settles. This dust is not visible. It is greed, anger, ignorance. It is clinging to the image of I. It is unhealed wounds, memories not released, nameless fears buried in the subconscious. This is why meditation is not about creating a new mind. It does not make you into someone else. It only invites you to return, to recognize the dust, and gently wipe it away. Picture a room with glass windows covered in dust and condensation. Outside, the sun shines brightly, but inside, it is dim. Is it because the sun is weak? No. It is because the glass blocks the light. So too, the light of wisdom is always present, never absent. But if we do not clear the window of the mind, that light cannot illuminate life. And the key is not that you must be better or be recognized. It is to pause and see clearly who you already are. Too many live their lives trying to build a perfect version of themselves, yet never feel enough. The Buddha taught of non-self, that the I you try to defend is not fixed. I am sad, I failed, I am not good enough. These are layers of emotional dust covering the mind. They are not you. When you practice mindfulness, you do not deny emotions. You simply do not mistake them for yourself. When anger rises, instead of saying, "I am an angry person," observe. There is anger. When sadness arrives, breathe and whisper, "This is a cloud. It will pass." Here's a small practice each morning before the day begins. Sit quietly for 5 minutes. Close your eyes and imagine wiping a mirror. Each breath is a stroke that clears dust. Each breath removes resentment. Each breath releases self-doubt. You do not need to create light. You only need to make space for the light that has always been waiting to shine. In this life, there are many times when you may feel as though you are living in a garden, overrun with weeds. Negativity, judgment from others, painful memories, they seem to grow even when you never invited them. So how can you keep your heart pure in a complicated world? Once someone asked Zen Master Bankei, "How can I avoid being tainted by others?" He replied, "If your mind does not cling, then no one can taint you. They can throw mud at you, but whether you pick it up or not, that is your choice." Today's story is about Faxiang, a young monk, and a special conversation with his elder brother Haiming in a garden. But in truth, this garden was not only a place of plants and flowers, but also a mirror reflecting the layers of dust within our own minds. Faxiang was new at the mountain monastery. He was honest and diligent, but had a great weakness. He was easily angered. Whenever he felt misunderstood or insulted, a fire would flare inside him like a forest blaze, burning away the peace he was trying to cultivate. One spring afternoon, while sweeping the courtyard, he overheard a group whispering behind him. They mentioned his name, along with unkind words, that he was lazy, that he had no potential for practice. Worst of all, the one said to have spoken these words was none other than Haiming, the elder monk respected by the whole monastery for his calmness and compassion. Faxiang's chest boiled. How could someone like Haiming, so gentle in appearance, speak badly about others behind their back? The thought pounded in his mind like a war drum. Unable to wait, he went to confront Haiming. He strode quickly to the back of the temple where he knew Haiming tended the garden each morning. As expected, Haiming was there kneeling by a bed of flowers, quietly pulling weeds. The late sun bathed his shoulders and robes in gold. Faxiang didn't greet him. His voice was sharp. "I heard you spoke ill of me, that I'm lazy, that I have no capacity for practice. Is that true?" Haiming looked up. No surprise, no defense, only a gentle smile as soft as morning wind. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he plucked another weed, placed it in the bamboo basket beside him, then spoke slowly. "Each morning, I come here to pull weeds from this garden. But if I became angry simply because weeds grow, I would no longer see the beauty of the flowers blooming. I only do my work without attachment." Still burning, Faxiang pressed. "So, you're denying it?" Haiming met his gaze, calm as a still lake. "I do not deny, nor do I confirm. Like this garden, some plants you call weeds, yet others may see them as medicine. What your mind sees, that is the world you live in." Faxiang froze. The words struck like cool water on a fire. At that very moment, a breeze passed through, ringing a wind chime hung on a peach branch. Its sound fell on him like a bell of awakening. Suddenly, he realized perhaps what he needed to uproot was not weeds in the soil, but weeds in his heart, the weeds of anger, pride, and the desire to be seen rightly by others. He bowed his head. The accusations dissolved like clouds. Slowly, he sat beside Haiming. Neither spoke again. Only two pairs of hands moved gently, pulling weeds, as though uprooting ignorance from the heart. The setting sun cast its golden glow over the garden and over the silence that bloomed between them. At first, this story may seem simple, yet it opens a doorway into the depth of Zen and mindfulness. It is not just about dialogue, but about two states of mind, one reactive and fiery, the other steady and reflective. Faxiang reacted as most of us do when hurt. He heard a rumor, didn't examine it, didn't pause. He reacted carrying anger like a flame. His mind was a dusty mirror reflecting only distorted images of what reached it. Hemming, meanwhile, tending the garden, embodied someone who had learned to live with whatever arose without being controlled by it. He neither denied nor affirmed, because truth doesn't lie in words, it lies in how you see. Hemming didn't argue, because he knew if a rumor can steal your peace, then the one who spread it has taken full control of your mind. The Buddha taught in the middle-length discourses, "Do not let your mind become unwholesome because of another's unwholesome act." Wisdom begins when you stop giving others the power to define you. The garden metaphor is both beautiful and true. Weeds are not wrong in themselves. They are only wrong when you don't understand their place. Some weeds may be medicine. Likewise, some emotions you try to reject may, if looked at closely, become gateways to awakening. Mindfulness is not about forcing the mind into quiet. It is learning to clearly see each wave of anger, each illusion, without being pulled away. When you can observe, you stop reacting. You begin reflecting. And when your mind becomes a clear mirror, you will see the flowers blooming, even while the weeds remain. What truly matters is not what the world says about you. What matters is whether you live with an open, unshaken heart, one not ruled by anger, hurt, or echoes of gossip. In Buddhism, judgments are only sounds like wind through trees. They may be loud, they may be soft, but they only become a storm when you open the doors of your mind to let them in. The story of Hemming teaches a precious truth: you don't need to defend yourself against every misunderstanding. His attitude was a living lesson in inner freedom, freedom from being dragged by emotions stirred from outside. Instead of battling, Hemming tended to the inner garden, where the weeds that must be pulled are unconscious reactions. You can practice this too. When someone upsets you, instead of reacting immediately, pause. Take 3 deep breaths, then ask yourself, do I truly see them? Or am I only reacting to the image of them in my mind? If asked with honesty, that question becomes a key to a quiet world where you are no longer a prisoner of emotions. Faxiang learned this lesson without a single lecture. Hemming's silence was itself the deepest teaching, like a still lake reflecting the entire sky. Have you ever felt as though you were trapped inside a narrow room of your own making, not built of bricks, but of old thoughts, limiting beliefs, and long-held judgments? Though the world outside is vast and boundless, you still feel surrounded by 4 walls. We often view life through frames we ourselves have created: right, wrong, success, failure, better, worse, should not. And anything outside those frames makes us fearful, resistant, closing the doors of our own hearts. Zen Master Bankei once said, "Your mind is originally the open sky, but through attachment, you have covered it with clouds." There are days when your heart feels heavy as lead, not because of something immense, but because of a single word, a small failure, or a memory left unresolved. These tiny things, held too long, can be enough to cover the sky within you. This is why the story of Norbu, can be a mirror for you to look back upon yourself and the sky you may have forgotten. Norbu was a young man, intelligent, diligent, and full of longing for a spiritual path. When he heard that Zen Master Daisen, known for his strict yet compassionate teaching, was receiving disciples at a remote mountain temple, Norbu did not hesitate. He packed his belongings, left the city, and arrived at the temple gates with reverence. The mountain temple was simple. Old earthen walls, moss-covered tiles, and the sound of wind moving through the pines. Yet in that simplicity, Norbu felt he had found the right place. Master Daisen asked little. He simply looked into Norbu with eyes deep enough to read the heart. If you wish to stay, begin with cooking, carrying water, sweeping leaves. Every task is meditation, if you see it deeply. Norbu bowed and agreed. For many months he practiced faithfully, rising before dawn, meditating at sunrise and sunset, carrying water from the stream, tending vegetables, cleaning the meditation hall without complaint or quitting. He kept the precepts, carefully avoided idle words, and did not let his mind wander. From the outside, Norbu looked like a model disciple advancing quickly on the path, but inside it was different. Day by day, a strange tension grew, something unseen, formless, yet enough to make him restless. He wondered, am I doing something wrong? Why does greater effort bring greater discomfort? Am I not good enough? Or is something in me resisting peace? He told no one, not out of fear of scolding, but because he did not know how to express it. Until one night after evening, meditation as the temple lay silent and wind moved gently through the bamboo, Norbu approached Master Daisen. Bowing low, he whispered, "Master, I have followed everything you taught, but inside me there is still a pressure, as though something blocks my path. I cannot name it, but it is there." The master was silent. Then he lifted his eyes to the night sky. The moon shone high stars glittering in the dark expanse. He pointed upward. "Look, Norbu. There is the sky." Norbu looked. The master continued. "Now imagine someone covers their own eyes with a black cloth, then cries out, 'The sky has disappeared.'" What do you think? Norbu paused, then answered softly, "The sky is still there. Only the person cannot see because they covered their own eyes." Master Daisen nodded gently. "Then what do you think is blocking you from the clarity and stillness you seek?" Norbu said nothing. But inside, something shifted. No more excuses, no more speculation. Only silence, as though the invisible veil within him was melting away. It was as if Norbu himself was removing the cloth from his eyes. The next morning, he sat to meditate as always. Same mat, same stone courtyard, but this time no longer straining to reach silence, liberation, or clarity. He simply sat as the sky sits upon the mountain, doing nothing, forcing nothing, and strangely, in that very release, he felt a vast openness inside. No more constriction, no fear of doing it wrong, no need to prove himself. Just a simple presence, complete, like the infinite sky his teacher pointed to. No one could give him that sky. No one could take it away. It had always been there. And now, for the first time, Norbu truly saw it. Norbu's story is a vivid illustration of one of Zen's deepest truths. The nature of seeing is never obstructed, only clinging creates delusion. Norbu was not trapped by circumstances, but by the mental frames he unconsciously built. To him, Zen had become a checklist, a path with goals, rewards, recognition. But all bondage came not from the world outside, but from the cloth he himself tied around his eyes. The mind cannot endure stillness. It constantly demands proof of progress, as if awakening must be measured by time or some miraculous event. Yet, as Master Daisan showed, the sky never vanishes. You simply do not see it because of the cloth you wear. The Vimalakirti Sutra says, "The Dharma abides nowhere. Only when the mind stirs do birth and death appear." Indeed, peace, clarity, and freedom are not destinations, they are already present here and now. Awakening is not something to achieve, it is what you rediscover when you stop searching. Picture your mind as a mirror covered in dust. The light has never ceased to shine, never once left. But if you keep imagining greater light or better reflections, you overlook the simplest practice: wiping the dust. Wiping with mindfulness. Wiping with letting go. Wiping by simply sitting and being present. Like Norbu, many mistake their tension for circumstances. But look closely, and you'll see it comes from too many ideas. I must be calm. I must be empty. I must attain. Yet when those notions fall away, when you no longer need to become, you truly are. And you realize you are the sky you thought you were seeking, and that sky has never left you. If you are practicing meditating or simply trying to live with awareness, remember there is no destination on the path back to yourself, no milestone where you can declare, "I am done," because the truth is, you never left. Practice is not to gain peace, but to see clearly what obstructs the peace that has always been within. We often think we must change, improve ourselves to deserve peace. But truly, what is needed is letting go, not striving. Like the moon always reflected on the lake, when the surface is still, the moon naturally appears. You can begin each day with 3 minutes of sitting quietly. No goals, no expectations, no attempt to meditate properly. Just sit as a cloud sits in the sky, free, unhurried, without needing to arrive anywhere. And you don't need to do anything complicated. Simply like Norbu, remove the cloth from your eyes. Don't try to see the sky, just uncover what blocks it. And when you do, even for a moment, you realize the sky was never gone. It was always there, within you. When the day ends and night embraces the world in silence, what remains is not unfinished plans or worries, but something utterly simple: gratitude. Gratitude for another day to live, to breathe, to return to yourself. Gratitude for these moments where you can simply be, simply listen, and everything feels enough without anything more. Together we've walked through Zen stories, ancient yet alive, reminding us that peace does not lie in ideal conditions, but in how you are present with this life. You do not need to become someone else. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to be yourself, with sincerity, awareness, and gratitude. I am grateful for you for being here, for listening with your heart, for walking this path of mindfulness with me. Each listener is a small lamp, helping preserve the ancient light of wisdom. And your silent presence makes it possible. If tonight's meditation touched something within you, please help spread these seeds of awareness to others. Subscribe to Buddhism Seeds for more press. Like, if you found it helpful, share it with your loved ones and leave a comment. I always wish to hear from you. Now you may close your eyes, release everything, and let sleep come as a gentle gift from the universe. May you sleep peacefully, deeply, with a heart full of quiet gratitude. Good night, and thank you for walking with us here at Buddhism Seeds.